Hey, good girl. Hey, good girl. Hey, good girl. Hey, good girl. Hey, good girl.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Hey, good girl.
Ignore me! Get off my ship.
Hey, good girl. Hey, good girl.
Wait. That's not possible.
Hey, good girl.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
Yo. 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 Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. Welcome back, everybody. Let's get a chance to win some subs to the channel. Play to play. Get your balls on the track. Get your balls on the track. Treasure Island. Treasure Island, everybody. We're returning to the island. Now, if you guys remember, we're 180 pages into the book now. We're 180 pages into the book. We're on chapter 19. Stream Pirates, yes. Yeah. Stream Pirates, rip. We're doubling. Annie. What's up, Pika? What's up, Des? So here's what happened last time. We were... Yeah, it is actually a good one. This is a good one. When last we met our heroes. Young Jim Hawkins, sitting in the apple basket, heard about the mutiny, told Squire Trelawney and the doctor. They got a couple good men together, a couple good hands. They got one pirate to go with them. They found a little nicely, easily fortifiable fort. They started taking supplies there. Now, there was a little shore leave that was happening at this time. Jim went with them on that way. Found out there was a couple crew members that weren't bent, much to their dismay, because they were murdered. One of them by Long John Silver, one of them by the crew. The other pirate crew, the mutinous scallywags. Now, the crew was all of a like mindset now. The good guys are getting gear towards this defensible position. Israel Hand, the main gunner, doesn't hit the ship, the little, lifeboat they're in, basically. Little rowboat. But it makes it precarious enough. They flip the boat. They lose a lot of the powder. They lose a lot of the food. But they do have water, which is one thing the ship doesn't have. Jim met Ben Gunn, a marooned pirate who has repented, says he's rich. Jim and Ben Gunn making their way to the position, and that is where we're at. Though the last couple things that happened beforehand was one of the men did die. One of the good guys did die. The old hand and servant of the doctor. So that's where we kind of pick up. The last 3 chapters were narrated by the doctor. The rest of the book has been narrated by Jim Hawkins, and Jim Hawkins picks up here. Chapter 9 is called Narrative Resumed by Jim Hawkins, The Garrison and the Stockade. So that's where we're going to pick up, and we're going to figure out how far we can get. Now, we've been reading about 90 pages a night. There are 146 pages to go. So chances are this is going to be 2 nights to get through this. Two minutes are going on the clock for our marbles. Again, we're going to run the same map while we read. That one that we've been trying to break this world record because the season starts tomorrow. 2 minutes going up on the clock. We got 5 of us in there. 5 brave souls trying to beat this world record. If you're not in there, do an exclamation point play to get your marble into the race. Stream Raiders is also going, and we've got 10 minutes, but I'm going to go ahead and start one right now. We may lose this one, but I want to get it kind of timed with marbles a little bit. I want to get a free half hour here. So I apologize if we lose. But these are the breaks. But it'll help us scale down anyways. And then everybody will realize we're live and running battles, and they'll be in here for the next one. It's not looking good for the home team. We got 6 of us left, 9 of them, but we could still make this happen. Still got the captain unit going. Unfortunately, the captain unit is a tank that doesn't attack very quickly. All right, we're down to 7 of them. Down to oh, let me put this on vibration. There we go. Oh man, that's why I can't read things. Just read a news headline. I was like, you gotta be out of your fucking mind. And that's why we don't talk about that stuff here. I let it slip every now and then. 6 to 7. I think we're gonna win this. It's just gonna take 17 years for us to do it. We're probably gonna time out. We're probably gonna win by timing. Oh, did you get in? You did get in, Shadow. Nicely done. Nicely done. Welcome, Shadow. Let's go follow the ball. We are taking our sweet time, guys. We are taking our sweet time. Our units like do no damage right now. But that's good. We're timed up kind of with this battle. Of course, if we take like 17 minutes to finish this battle, we won't be timed up. There we go. It's 6-6. Start the timer already. What do we got? We got 3 tanks, a ferry, and 2 archers. And these guys are a little beefy. They got 3,000 hit points. We got 138 left. I think we're going to win on a time. I think we're going to win on a timeout. So we got like a minute and a half, and then I'll start the reading. I don't want to start and stop immediately when we get into this. Again, we're finishing up. Well, not finishing up. We're continuing Treasure Island. We are on Chapter 19. We read 90 pages the first night. We read 90 pages the second night. We'll probably read around 90 pages tonight. And if we do that, if we read 90 pages tonight, then we will have 56 pages the following week. Now, there is a poll up in Discord for what the next book's going to be. And guess what, brats? You got 3 of them tied right now. The book options are, for the next book, we'll be reading A Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the first of Oz books. Now, there's a lot of Oz books, if you guys don't know. There's a lot of Oz books. A Study in Scarlet, that is the first Sherlock Holmes book. Winnie the Pooh, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So those are the 4 books. Discord poll went up today. It's under the Reading Streams category. Feel free to head into there. We got 20 seconds left on this battle. It's our 6 to their 4. Our 6 to their 3. So we're going to win on timeout. We would kill all of them, though, because all that's left is the support units. Dez gets the bone eye. We move on. I did not think it would take that long, guys. I didn't realize we had just had tanks and a couple archers. Nobody was doing any real damage. So I will put a warrior this time. So we got some damage in there. Good luck, everybody. Thank you for your units. Good luck on the next battle. And let's get to it. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Treasure Island. Chapter 19. Narrative resumed by Jim Hawkins. The Garrison in the Stockade. As soon as Ben Gunn saw the colors, he came to a halt, stopped me by the arm, and sat down. "Now," said he, "there's your friends, sure enough." "Far more likely it's the mutineers," I answered. "That?" he cried. "Why, in a place like this, where nobody put in but gentlemen of fortune, silver would fly the Jolly Roger. You don't make no doubt about that. No, that's your friends. There's been blows, too, and I reckon your friends has had the best of it. And here they are ashore in the old stockade, as was made years and years ago by Flint. Ah, he was the man to have a headpiece, was Flint. Barring rum, his match were never seen. He was afraid of none, not he, only Silver. Silver was that genteel." "Well," said I, "this may be so, and so be it. All the more reason that I should hurry on and join my friends." "Nay, mate," returned Ben, "not you. You're a good boy, or I'm mistook, but you're only a boy, all told. Now, Ben Gunn is fly. Rum wouldn't bring me there. Where you're going, no rum wouldn't. Till I see a born gentleman and gets it on his word of honor, and you won't forget my words. A precious sight, that's what you'll say. A precious sight more confidence, and then nips him." And he pinched me the 3rd time with the same air of cleverness. And when Ben Gunn is wanted, you know where to find him, Jim. Just where you find him today. And him that comes is to have a white thing in his hand, and he is to come alone. Oh, and you'll say this, Ben Gunn, says you, has reasons of his own. "Well," said I believe I understand. You have something to propose, and you wish to see the squire or the doctor, and you're to be found where I found you. Is that all?" "And when," says you, he added. Why about noon observation to about 6 bells? Good, says I. And now may I go? You won't forget? He inquired anxiously. Precious sight. And reasons of his own, says you. Reasons of his own. That's the mainstay is between man and man. Well then, still holding me. I reckon you can go, Jim. And Jim, if you was to see Silver, you wouldn't go for him to sell a big gun. Wild horses wouldn't draw it from you. No, says you. And if them pirate camps ashore, Jim, what would you say but there be witters in the morning? Here he was interrupted by a loud report, and a cannonball came tearing through the trees and pitched in the sand, not 100 yards from where we were two talking. The next moment, each of us had taken to his heels in a different direction. For a good hour to come, frequent reports shook the island, and balls kept crashing through the woods. I moved from hiding place to hiding place, always pursued, or so it seemed to me, by these terrifying missiles. But towards the end of the bombardment, though still I durst not venture in the direction of the stockade, where the balls fell oftenest, I had begun in a manner to pick up my heart again, and after a long detour to the east, crept down along the shore-side trees. The sun had just set. The sea breeze was rustling and tumbling in the woods, and ruffling the gray surface of the anchorage. The tide, too, was far out, and great tracts of sand lay uncovered. The air, after the heat of the day, chilled me through my jacket. The Hispaniola still lay where she had anchored, but sure enough, there was the Jolly Roger, the black flag of piracy, flying from her peak. Even as I looked, there came another red flash and another report that sent the echoes clattering, and one more round shot whistled through the air. It was the last of the cannonade. I lay for some time watching the bustle which succeeded the attack. Men were demolishing something with axes on the beach near the stockade, the poor jolly boat I afterwards discovered. Away near the mouth of the river, a great fire was glowing amongst the trees, and between that point and the ship, one of the gigs kept coming and going, and men whom I had seen so gloomy shouting at oars like children. But there was a sound in their voices which suggested rum. At length, I thought I might return towards the stockade. I was pretty far down on the low, sandy pit that encloses the anchorage to the east and is joined at half water to Skeleton Island, and now, as I rose to my feet, I saw, some distance further down the spit and rising from among low bushes, an isolated rock, pretty high and particularly white in color. It occurred to me that this might be the white rock of which Ben Gunn had spoken, and that some day or other a boat might be wanted, and I should know where to look for one. There I skirted among the woods until I had regained the rear or shoreward side of the stockade, and was soon warmly welcomed by the faithful party. I had told my story and began to look about me. The log house was made of unsquared chunks of pine, roof, walls, floor. The latter stood in several places as much as a foot or a foot and a half above the surface of the sand. There was a porch at the door, and under this porch, the little spring welled into an artificial basin of a rather odd kind, no other than a great ship's kettle of iron, with the bottom knocked out and sunk to her bearings, as the captain said, among the sand. Little had been left besides the framework of the house, but in one corner there was a stone slab laid down by the way of the hearth, and an old rusty iron basket to contain the fire. The slopes of the knoll and all the inside of the stockade had been cleared of timber to build the house, and what we could see by the stumps, what a fine and lofty grove had been destroyed. Most of the soil had been washed away or buried in drift after the removal of the trees. Only where the streamlet ran down from the kettle, a thick bed of moss and some ferns and a little creeping bush were still green among the sand. Very close around the stockade, too close for defense, they said, the woods still flourished high and dense, all of fir and on the land side, but towards the sea with a large admixture of live oaks. The cold evening breeze of which I have spoken whistled through every chink of the rude building, and sprinkled the floor with a continual rain of fine sand. There was a sand in our eyes, sand in our teeth, sand in our suppers, sand dancing in the spring at the bottom of the kettle, for all the world like porridge beginning to boil. Our chimney was a square hole in the roof. It was but a little part of the smoke that found its way out, and the rest eddied about the house and kept us coughing and piping the eye. And to this that Gray, the new man, had his face tied up in a bandage for a cut he had got in breaking away from the mutineers, and that poor old Tom Redruth, still unburied, lay among the walls, stiff and stark, under the Union Jack. If we had been allowed to sit idle, we should all have fallen into the blues, but Captain Smollett was never the man for that. All hands were called up before him, and he divided us into watches. The doctor, and Gray, and I, for one, the squire, Hunter, and Joyce upon the other. Tired as we all were, 2 were sent out for firewood, 2 more were set to dig a grave for Redruth. The doctor was named cook, I was put sentry at the door, and the captain himself went from one to another, keeping up our spirits and lending a hand wherever it was wanted. From time to time the doctor came to the door for a little air and to rest his eyes, which were almost smoked out of his head, and whenever he did so he had a word for me. "That man Smollett," he said once, "is better man than I am, and when I say that it means a deal, Jim." Another time he came and he was silent for a while, and then he put his head on one side and looked at me. "Is this Ben Gunn a man?" he asked. I don't know, sir," said I. "I am not very sure whether he's sane." "If there's any doubt about the matter, he is," returned the doctor. "A man who has been here 3 years, biting his nails on a desert island, Jim, can't expect to appear as sane as you and me. It doesn't lie in human nature. Was it cheese you said he had a fancy for?" "Yes, sir, cheese," I answered. "Well, Jim," says he, "just see that the good that comes of being dainty in your food. You've never seen my snuff box, have you? And you have never seen me take snuff. The reason being that in my snuff box I carry a piece of Parmesan cheese, a cheese made in Italy, very nutritious. Well, that's for Ben Gunn." Before supper was eaten, we buried old Tom in the sand, and stood round him for a while, bareheaded in the breeze. A good deal of firewood had been got in, but not enough for the captain's fancy, and he shook his head over it, and told us that we must get back to this tomorrow rather livelier. Then when we had eaten our pork, each had a good stiff glass of brandy grog, the 3 chiefs got together in a corner to discuss our prospects. It appears they were at their wits' end what to do, the stores being so low that we must have been starved into surrender long before help came. But our best hope, it was decided, was to kill off the buccaneers until they either hauled down their flag or ran away with the Hispaniola. From 19, they were already reduced to 15. 2 others were wounded, and one, at least, the man shot beside the gun, severely wounded, if he were not dead. Every time we had a crack at them, we were to take it, saving our own lives with the extremest care, and besides that, we had 2 able allies, rum and the climate. As for the first, though we were about a half a mile away, we could hear them roaring and singing late into the night, and as for the second, the doctor staked his wig that, camped where they were in the marsh and unprovided with remedies, the half of them would be on their backs before a week. "So," he added, "if we were not all shut down first, they'll be glad to be packing in the schooner. It's always a ship, and they can always get to buccaneering again, I suppose." "First ship that I ever lost," said Captain Smollett. I was dead tired, as you may fancy, and when I got to sleep, which was not till after a great deal of tossing, I slept like a log of wood. The rest had long been up and had already breakfasted and increased the pile of firewood by about half as much again when I awakened, by a bustle and the sound of voices. "Flag of truce," I heard someone say, and then immediately after with the cry of surprise, "Silver himself!" And at that, up I jumped, and rubbing my eyes, ran to a loophole in the wall. End of chapter 19. Chapter 20. Silver's Embassy. Sure enough, there were 2 men just outside the stockade, one of them waving a white cloth, the other no less a person than Silver himself, standing placidly by. It was still quite early in the coldest morning that I think I was ever abroad in, a chill that pierced into the marrow. The sky was bright and cloudless overhead, and the tops of the trees shone rosily in the sun. But where Silver stood with his lieutenant, all was still in shadow, and they waded knee-deep in a low white vapor that had crawled during the night out of the morass. The chill and the vapor, taken together, told a poor tale of the island. It was plainly a damp, feverish, unhealthy spot. "Keep indoors, men," said the captain. 10 to 1, this is a trick. Then he hailed the buccaneer. "Who goes? Stand, or we fire." "Flag a truce," cried Silver. The captain was out in the porch, keeping himself carefully out of the way of a treacherous shot should any be attended. He turned and spoke to us. "Doctor's watch on the lookout. Dr. Livesey, take the north side, if you please. Jim, the east. Gray, west. The watch below. All hands to load muskets. Lively, men, and careful." And then he turned again to the mutineers. "And what do you want with your flag of truce?" he cried. This time it was the other man who replied. "Captain Silver, sir, to come aboard and make times," he shouted. "Captain Silver? Don't know him. Who's he?" cries the captain, and we could hear him adding to himself, "Captain, is it? My heart, and here's promotion." Long John answered for himself. "Me, sir. These poor lads have chosen me captain after your desertion, sir," laying a particular emphasis upon the word desertion. "We're willing to submit, if we can come to terms and no bones about it. All I ask is your word, Captain Smollett, to let me safe and sound out of this here stockade in 1 minute to get out a shot before the gun is fired." "My man," said Captain Smollett, "I have not the slightest desire to talk to you. If you wish to talk to me, you can come, that's all. If there's any treachery, it'll be on your side, and the Lord help you." "Aye, that's enough, Captain," shouted Long John cheerily. "A word from you's enough. I know a gentleman, you may lay to that." We could see the man who carried the flag of truce attempting to hold Silver back, nor was that wonderful seeing how cavalier had been the captain's answer, but Silver laughed at him aloud and slapped him on the back as if the idea of alarm had been absurd. Then he advanced to the stockade, threw over his crutch, got a leg up, and with great vigor and skill succeeded in surmounting the fence and dropping safely to the other side. I will confess that I was far too much taken up with what was going on to be of the slightest use this century. Indeed, I had already deserted my eastern loophole and crept up beside the captain, who was now seated himself on the threshold with his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands, and his eyes fixed on the water as it bubbled out of the old iron kettle in the sand. He was whistling to himself, "Come, lassies and lads." Silver had terrible hard work getting up the knoll. What with the steepness of the incline, the thick tree stumps, and the soft sand, he and his crutch were as helpless as a ship in stays. But he stuck to it like a man, in silence, and at last arrived before the captain, whom he saluted in the handsomest style. He was tricked out in the best, an immense blue coat, thick with brass buttons, hung as low to his knees, and a fine laced hat was set on the back of his head. "Here you are, my man," said the captain, raising his head. "You had better sit down." "You ain't going to let me inside, Captain," complained Long John. "It's a main cold morning, to be sure, sir, to sit outside upon the sand." "Why, Silver," said the captain, "if you had pleased to be an honest man, you might have been sitting in your galley. It's your own doing. You're either my ship's cook, and then you were treated handsome, or Captain Silver, a common mutineer and pirate, and then you can go hang." "Oh, well, Captain," returned the sea cook, sitting down as he was bidden on the sand. "You'll have to give me a hand up again, that's all. A sweet pretty place you have here of it. Ah, here's Jim. Top of the morning to you, Jim. Doctor, here's my service. Why, there you all together like a happy family, in a manner of speaking." "If you have anything to say, my man, better say it," said the captain. "Right you are, Captain Smollett," replied Silver. "Duty is duty, be sure. Well, now you look here, and there was a good lay of yours last night. I don't deny it was a good lay. Some of you pretty handy with the handspike end, and I'll not deny it neither, but some of my people was shook. Maybe all was shook. Maybe I was shook myself. Maybe that's why I'm here for terms. But you mark me, Captain, it won't do twice, by thunder. We'll have to do sentry go and ease off a point or so on the rum. Maybe you think we were all a sheet in a wind's eye, but I'll tell you I was sober. I was only dog-tired, and if I'd woke a second sooner, I'd have caught you in the act, I would. You wasn't dead when I got around to him, not he. Well, says Captain Smollett, as cool as can be. All that Silver said was a riddle to him, but you never had guessed it from his tone. As for me, I'd begun to have an inkling. Ben Gunn's last words come back to my mind. I began to suppose that he had paid the Buccaneers a visit while they all lay drunk together around their fire, and I reckoned up with glee that we had only 14 enemies to deal with. Well, here it is, cried Silver. We want that treasure and we'll have it. That's our point. You would just as soon as save your lives, I reckon, and that's yours. You'll have a chart, haven't you? That says may be, replied the captain. Oh, well, you have, I know that, returned Long John. You needn't be so husky with a man. There ain't a particular service in that, and you may lay to it. What I mean is we want your chart. We want your chart. Now, I never meant you no harm myself. That won't do with me, my man, interrupted the captain. We know exactly what you mean to do, and we don't care. For now, you see, you can't do it. And the captain looked at him calmly and proceeded to fill a pipe. If Abe Gray, Silver broke out. Avast there! Cried Mr. Smollett. Gray told me nothing, and I asked him nothing. But what's more, I would see you and him in this whole island blown clean out of the water into blazes first. So there's my mind for you, my man, and on that. This little whiff of temper seemed to cool Silver down. He had been growing nettled before, but now he pulled himself together. Like enough. I would set no limits to what gentlemen might consider shipshape, or might not, as the case were. And seeing as how you are about to take a pipe, Captain, I'll make so free to do likewise. And he filled a pipe and lighted it. And the two men sat silently smoking for quite a while, now looking each other in the face, now stopping their tobacco, now leaning forward to spit. It was as good as the play to see them. Now, resumed Silver, here it is. You give us the chart to get the treasure by and drop shooting poor seamen and stoving of their heads while they're asleep. You do that and we'll offer you a choice. Either you come aboard of us once the treasure's shipped, and then I'll give you my affidavy upon my word of honor to clap you somewhere safe ashores. Or if that ain't to your fancy, some of my hands being rough and having old scores on account of haze, and then you can stay here, you can. I'll divide stores with you man for man, and I'll give you my affidavy as before to speak the first ship a sight and send 'em here to pick you up. Now you'll own that's talking, handsomer you look to get, not you? And I hope, raising his voice, that all hands in here blockhouse will overhaul my words, for what in spoke is spoke to one, is spoke to all. Captain Smollett rose from his seat, knocked the ashes of his pipe in the palm of his left hand. Is that all? He asked. Every last word, by thunder, answered John. Refuse that, and you've seen the last of me but musket balls. Very good, said the captain. Now you'll hear me. If you come up one by one, unarmed, I'll engage to clap you all in irons and take you home to a fair trial in England. If you won't, my name is Alexander Smollett. I've flown my sovereign's colors, and I'll see you all to Davy Jones. You can't find the treasure. You can't sail the ship. There's not a man among you fit to sail the ship. You can't fight us. Gray there got away from 5 of you. Your ship's in irons, Master Silver. You're on a nice shore, and so you'll find. I stand here and tell you so, and they're the last good words you'll get from me, for, in the name of heaven, I'll put a bullet in your back when I next meet you. Tramp, my lad. Bundle out of this, please, hand over hand, and double quick. Silver's face was a picture. His eyes started in his head with wrath. He shook the fire out of his pipe. Give me a hand up, he cried. Not I, returned the captain. Who'll give me a hand up? He roared. Not a man among us moved. Growling the foulest imprecations, he crawled along the sand till he got a hold of the porch and could hoist himself upon his crutch. Then he spat into the spring. There, he cried. That's what I think of ye. Before an hour's out, I'll stove in your old blockhouse like a rumbuncheon. Laugh, by thunder, laugh! Before an hour's out, you'll laugh upon the other side. Them that'll die'll be the lucky ones. And with a dreadful oath, he stumbled off, plowed down the sand, was helped across the stockade after 4 or 5 failures by the man with the flag of truce, and disappeared in an instant afterwards among the trees. End of chapter 20. Chapter 21. The attack. Y'all stove in your old blockhouse like a rum puncheon, right? There's some colorful metaphors. As soon as Silver disappeared, the captain, who had been closely watching him, turned towards the interior of the house and found not a man of us at his post but Gray. It was the first time we'd ever seen him angry. "Quarters!" he roared. And then, as we all sunk black to our places, "Gray," he said, "I'll put your name in the log. You've stood by your duty like a seaman. Mr. Trelawney, I'm surprised at you, sir. Doctor, I thought you had worn the king's coat. If that was how you served at Fontenoy, sir, you'd have been better in your berth." The doctor's watch were all back at their loopholes. The rest were busy loading the spare muskets, and everyone with a red face, you may be certain, and a flea in his ear, as the saying is. The captain looked on for a while in silence, then he spoke. "My lads," said he, "I've given Silver a broadside. I pitched it in red hot on purpose, and before the hour's out, as he said, we shall be boarded. We're outnumbered, I needn't tell you that, but we fight in shelter, and a minute ago I should have said we fought with discipline. I've no matter of doubt that we can drub them if you choose." Then he went the rounds and saw, as he said, that all was clear. On the 2 sides of the house, east and west, there were only 2 loopholes. On the south side where the porch was, 2 again, and on the north side, 5. There was a round score of muskets for the 7 of us. The firewood had been built into 4 piles, tables, you might say, one about the middle of each side, and on each of these tables some ammunition and 4 loaded muskets were laid ready to the hand of the defenders. In the middle the cutlasses lay ranged. "Toss out the fire," said the captain. "The chill is past, and we mustn't have smoke in our eyes." The iron fire basket was carried bodily out by Mr. Trelawney, and the embers smothered among sand. "Hawkins hasn't had his breakfast. Hawkins, help yourself, and back to your post to eat it," continued Captain Smollett. "Lively now, my lad. You'll want it before you've done. Hunter, serve out a round of brandy to all hands." And while this was going on, the captain complimented in his own mind the plan of the defense. "Doctor, you will take the door. See and don't expose yourself. Keep within and fire through the porch. Hunter, take the east side there. Joyce, you stand by the west, my man. Mr. Trelawney, you are the best shot. You and Gray will take the north side with the 5 loopholes. If there's the danger, it's there the danger is. If they can get up to it and fire in upon us through their own ports, things would begin to look dirty. Hawkins, neither you nor I are much account at the shooting. We'll stand by to load and bear a hand." As the captain had said, the chill was past. As soon as the sun had climbed above our girdle of trees, it fell with all its force upon the clearing and drank up the vapors at a draught. Soon the sand was baking, and the resin melting in the logs of the blockhouse. Jackets and coats were flung aside, shirts thrown open at the neck and rolled up to the shoulders, and we stood there, each at his post, in a fever of heat and anxiety. An hour passed away. "Hang them," said the captain. "This is dull as the doldrums. Gray, whistle for a wind." And just at that moment came the first news of attack. "If you please, sir," said Joyce, "if I see anyone, am I to fire?" "I told you so," cried the captain. "Thank you, sir," returned Joyce, with the same quiet civility. Nothing followed for a time, but the remark had set us all on alert, straining ears and eyes. The musketeers with their pieces balanced in their hands, the captain out in the middle of the blockhouse with his mouth very tight and a frown on his face. So some seconds passed till suddenly Joyce whipped up his musket and fired. The report had scarcely died away ere it was repeated and repeated from without in a scattering volley, shot behind shot like a string of geese from every side of the enclosure. Several bullets struck the log house, but not one entered. And as the smoke cleared away and vanished, the stockade and woods around it looked as quiet and as empty as before. Not a bough waved, not the gleam of a musket barrel betrayed the presence of our foes. "Did you hit your man?" asked the captain. "No, sir," replied Joyce. "I believe not, sir." "Next best thing to tell the truth," muttered Captain Smollett. "Load his gun, Hawkins. How many should you say there was on your side, Doctor?" "I know precisely," said Dr. Livesey. "3 shots were fired on this side. I saw the 3 flashes, 2 close together, 1 further to the west." "3," replied the captain. "And how many on yours, Mr. Trelawney?" But this was not so easily answered. There had come many from the north, 7 by the squire's computation, 8 or 9 according to Gray. From the east and west only a single shot had been fired. It was plain, therefore, that the attack would be developed from the north, and that on the other 3 sides we were only to be annoyed by a show of hostilities. But Captain Smollett made no change in his arrangements. If the mutineers succeeded in crossing the stockade, he argued, they would take possession of any unprotected loophole and shoot us down like rats in our own stronghold. Nor had we much time left for us to think. Suddenly, with a loud huzzah, a little cloud of pirates leaped from the woods on the north side and ran straight on the stockade. At the same moment, there was fire once more opened in the woods, and the rifle ball sang through the doorway and knocked the doctor's musket into bits. The boarders swarmed over the fence like monkeys. Squire and Gray fired again and yet again. 3 men fell, 1 forwards into the enclosure, 2 back on the outside. But of these, 1 was evidently more frightened than hurt, for he was on his feet again in a crack and instantly disappeared among the trees. 2 had bit the dust, 1 had fled, 4 had made good their footing inside our defenses, while from the shelter of the woods 7 or 8 men, each evidently supplied with several muskets, kept up a hot, though useless, fire on the long house. The 4 who had boarded made straight before them for the building, shouting as they ran, and the men among the trees shouted back to encourage them. Several shots were fired, but such is the hurry of the marksmen, not one appears to have taken effect. In a moment, the 4 pirates had swarmed up the mound and were upon us. The head of Job Anderson, the boatswain, appeared at the middle loophole. "At 'em, all hands!" he roared in a voice of thunder. And at the same moment another pirate grasped Hunter's musket by the muzzle, wrenched it from his hands, plucked it through the loophole, and with one stunning blow laid the poor fellow senseless on the floor. Meanwhile, a third, running unharmed all around the house, appeared suddenly at the doorway and fell with his cutlass on the doctor. Our position was utterly reversed. A moment since we were firing under cover at an exposed enemy. Now it was we who lay uncovered and could not return a blow. We'll pause. Let's run Raiders and get a new marbles going. Ariel got the win, but we did not beat the local or world record. Let's load it up again, guys. Good luck. Let's do it. Exclamation point, play to play. Balls on the track, balls on the track. Exclamation point, play to get your marble in the race. If you beat the local record of 29.5 minutes by Shadowfire, you will get a sub to the channel for free for 1 month. If you beat the world record, you will either get a tier 3 sub for 1 month or 3 months of a tier 1 sub. Huzzah. Get them in. Get your balls on the track. Get your balls on the track. Let's break this world record, guys. So we're mid-attack. It looks like they caught a couple with the muskets, but only a couple out of 14. And 4 of them are at the building now, or inside the building. At or inside the building. It's game time. We're in the middle of a fight. Kriznach getting 7 kills and 11 assists. Doing all the things. Automatic, Kriznach, and Lone Hermit get the boni. All right. Thank you for your units and good luck on the next battle. We're in the chapter called The Attack. Appropriate. I'll reread the last paragraph because it was 2 sentences anyways, but our position was utterly reversed. A moment since we were firing under cover at an exposed enemy, now it was we who lay uncovered and could not return a blow. The log house was full of smoke to which we owed our comparative safety. Cries and confusion, the flashes and reports of pistol shots, and one loud groan rang in my ears. "Out, lads, out, and fight him in the open! Cutlasses!" cried the captain. I snatched a cutlass from the pile, and someone, at the same time snatching another, gave me a cut across the knuckles, which I hardly felt. I dashed out the door into the clear sunlight. Someone was close behind, I knew not whom. Right in front, the doctor was pursuing his assailant down the hill, and just as my eyes fell upon, beat down his guard and sent him sprawling on his back with a great slash across the face. "Round the house, lads, round the house," cried the captain, and even in the hurly-burly I perceived a change in his voice. Mechanically I obeyed, turned eastwards, and with my cutlass raised, ran around the corner of the house. Next moment I was face to face with Anderson. He roared aloud, and his hanger went up above his head, flashing in the sunlight. I had not time to be afraid, but as the blow still hung impending, leaped in, thrice upon one side, and missing my foot in the soft sand, rolled headlong down the slope. When I had first sallied from the door, the other mutineers had already been swarming up the palisade to make an end of us. One man in a red nightcap with his cutlass in his mouth had even got upon the top and thrown a leg across. Well, so short had been the interval that when I found my feet again, all was in the same posture. The fellow with the red nightcap still halfway over, another still just showing his head above the top of the stockade, and yet in this breath of time the fight was over and the victory was ours. Gray, following close behind me, had cut down the big boatswain ere he had time to recover from his lost blow. Another had been shot at the loophole in the very act of firing into the house, and now lay in agony, the pistol still smoking in his hand. A third, as I had seen, the doctor had disposed of at a blow. Of the 4 who had scaled the palisade, only one remained unaccounted for, and he, having left his cutlass on the field, was now clambering out again with the fear of death upon him. "Fire! Fire from the house!" cried the doctor. "And you, lads, back into cover!" But his words were unheeded. No shot was fired, and the last boarder made good his escape and disappeared with the rest into the wood. In 3 seconds, nothing remained of the attacking party but the 5 who had fallen, 4 on the inside and 1 on the outside of the palisade. The doctor and Gray and I ran full speed for the shelter. The survivors would soon be back where they had left their muskets, and at any moment the fire might recommence. The house was by this time somewhat clear of smoke, and we saw at a glance the price we had paid for victory. Hunter lay beside his loophole, stunned. Joyce by his, shot through the head, never to move again. While right in the center, the squire was supporting the captain, one as pale as the other. "The captain's wounded," said Mr. Trelawney. "Have they run?" asked Mr. Smollett. "All that could, you may be bound," returned the doctor. "But there's 5 of them, never run again." "5," cried the captain. "Come, that's better. 5 against 3 leaves us 4-9. That's better odds than we had at starting. We were 7-19 then, or thought we were, and that's as bad to bear." There's a footnote that says the mutineers were soon only 8 in number, for the man shot by Mr. Trelawney on board the schooner died that same evening of his wounds, but this was, of course, not known till after by the faithful party. End of part 4. Part 5, My Sea Adventure. Chapter 22, How I Began My Sea Adventure. There was no return of the mutineers, not so much as another shot out of the woods. They had got their rations for the day, as the captain put it, and we had to place to ourselves in a quiet time to overhaul the wounded and get dinner. Squire and I cooked outside in spite of the danger, and even outside we could hardly tell where we were at for horror of the loud groans that reached us from the doctor's patients. Out of the 8 men who had fallen in the action, only 3 still breathed. That one of the pirates who had been shot at the loophole, Hunter and Captain Smollett. And of these, the first 2 were as good as dead. The mutineer, indeed, died under the doctor's knife, and Hunter, do what we could, never recovered consciousness in this world. He lingered all day, breathing loudly like the old buccaneer at home in his apoplectic fit. But the bones of his chest had been crushed by the blow, and his skull fractured in falling, and sometime in the following night, without sign or sound, he went to his maker. As for the captain, his wounds were grievous indeed, but not dangerous. No organ was fatally injured. Anderson's ball, for it was Job that had shot him first, had broken his shoulder blade and touched the lung, but not badly. The second had only torn and displaced some muscles in the calf. He was sure to recover, the doctor said, but in the meantime, and for weeks to come, he must not walk nor move his arm so much as speak when he could help it. My own accidental cut across the knuckles was a flea bite. Dr. Livesey patched it up with plaster and pulled my ears for me into the bargain. After dinner, the squire and the doctor sat by the captain's side a while in consultation, and when they had begun to talk to their heart's content, it being then a little past noon, the doctor took up his hat and pistols, girt on a cutlass, put the chart in his pocket, and with a musket on his shoulder, crossed the palisade on the north side and set off briskly through the trees. Gray and I were sitting together at the far end of the blockhouse to be out of earshot of our officers consulting, and Gray took his pipe out of his mouth and fairly forgot to put it back again, so thunderstruck he was at his occurrence. "Why, in the name of Davy Jones," said he, "is Dr. Livesey mad?" "Why, no," says I. "He's about the last of his crew for that, I take it." "Well, shipmate," said Gray, "mad he may not be, but if he's not, mark my words, I am." "I take it," replied I. "The doctor has his idea, and if I am right, he's going now to see Ben Gunn?" I was right, as appeared later. But in the meantime, the house being stifling hot, and the little patch of sand inside the palisade ablaze with midday sun, I'd begun to get another thought into my head, which was not by any means so right. What I had begun to do was to envy the doctor, walking in the cool shadow of the woods with the birds about him and the pleasant smell of the pines, while I sat grilling with my clothes stuck to the hot resin and so much blood about me and so many poor dead bodies lying all around that I took a disgust of the place that was almost as strong as fear. All the time I was washing out the blockhouse and then washing up the things from dinner. This disgust and envy kept growing stronger and stronger, till at last, being near a bread bag and no one then observing me, I took the first step towards my escapade and filled both pockets of my coat with biscuit. I was a fool, if you like, and certainly I was going to do a foolish, overbold act, but I was determined to do it with all the precautions in my power. These biscuits, should anything befall me, would keep me at least from starving till far on in the next day. The next thing I laid hold of was a brace of pistols, and as I already had a powder horn and bullets, I felt myself well supplied with arms. As for the scheme I had in my head, it was not a bad one in itself. I was to go down the sandy spit that divides the anchorage on the east from the open sea, find the white rock I observed last evening, ascertain whether it was there or not that Ben Gunn had hidden his boat, a thing quite worth doing, as I still believe, but as I was certain I should not be allowed to leave the enclosure, my only plan was to take French leave and slip out when nobody was watching. And that was so bad a way of doing it as made the thing itself wrong, but I was only a boy, and I had made my mind up. Well, as things at last fell out, I found an admirable opportunity. The squire and Gray were busy helping the captain with his bandages, and the coast was clear. I made a bolt for it over the stockade and into the thicket of trees, and before my absence was observed, I was out of the cry of my companions. This was my second folly, far worse than the first, and as I left but 2 sound men to guard the house, but like the first, it was a help towards saving all of us. I took my way straight for the east coast of the island, for I was determined to go down the seaside of the spit to avoid all chance of observation from the anchorage. It was already late in the afternoon, although still warm and sunny, and As I continued to thread the tall woods, I could hear from the far before me not only the continuous thunder of the surf, but a certain tossing of foliage and grinding of boughs which showed me the sea breeze had set in higher than the usual. Soon, cool draughts of air began to reach me, and a few steps farther I came forth into the open borders of the grove and saw the sea lying blue and sunny to the horizon, and the surf tumbling and tossing its foam along the beach. I have never seen the sea quiet around Treasure Island. The sun might blaze overhead, the air be without a breath, and the surface smooth and blue, but still these great rollers would be running along all the external coast, thundering and thundering by day and night, and I scarce believe there's one spot in the island where a man would be out of earshot of their noise. I walked along beside the surf with great enjoyment till, thinking I was now got far enough to the south, I took cover of some thick bushes and crept warily up the ridge of the spit. Behind me was the sea, in front the anchorage. The sea breeze, as though it had the sooner blown itself out of its unusual violence, was already at an end. It had been succeeded by light variable airs from the south and southeast, carrying great banks of fog, and the anchorage, under lee of Skeleton Island, lay still and leaden as when first we entered it. The Hispaniola, in that unbroken mirror, was exactly portrayed from the truck to the waterline, the Jolly Roger hanging from her peak. Alongside lay one of the gigs, silver in the stern sheets. Him I could always recognize, while a couple of men were leaning over the stern bulwarks. One of them with a red cap, the very rogue that I had seen some hours before stride legs upon the palisade. Apparently they were talking and laughing, though at some distance upwards of a mile I could of course hear no word of what was said. All at once there began the most horrid, unearthly screaming, which at first startled me badly, though I soon remembered the voice of Captain Flint, and even thought I could make out the bird by her bright plumage as she sat perched upon her master's wrist. Soon after, the jolly boat shoved off and pulled for shore, and the man with the red cap and his comrade went below by the cabin companion. Just about the same time the sun had gone down behind the spyglass, and as the fog was collecting rapidly, it began to grow dark in earnest. I saw I must lose no time if I were to find the boat that evening. The white roke, visible enough from above the brush, was still some eighth of a mile farther down the spit, and it took me a goodish while to get up to it, crawling often on all fours amongst the scrub. Night had almost come when I laid my hand upon its rough sides. Right below it there lay exceedingly small hollow of green turf, hidden by banks and a thick underwood about kneecap that grew very plentifully, and in the center of the dell, sure enough, a little tent of goat skins like what with gypsies carry about them in England. I dropped into the hollow, lifted the side of the tent, and there was Big Gun's boat. Homemade, if ever anything was homemade. A rude, lopsided framework of tough wood, and stretched upon that covering of goat skin with the hair inside. The thing was extremely small, even for me, and I can hardly imagine that it could have floated with a full-sized man. There was one thwart swept as low as possible, a kind of stretcher in the bows, and a double paddle for propulsion. I had not then seen a coracle such as the ancient Britons had, but I have seen one since, and I can give you no fairer idea of Ben Gunn's boat than by saying it was like the first and the worst coracle ever made by man. But the great advantage of the coracle it certainly possessed, for it was exceedingly light and portable. Well, now that I have found the boat, you would have thought that I had had enough of truancy for once, but in the meantime I had taken another notion and become so obstinately fond of it that I would have carried it out, I believe, in the teeth of Captain Smollett himself. This was to slip out under the cover of night, cut the Hispaniola adrift, and let her go ashore where she fancied. I had quite made up my mind that the mutineers, after their repulse of the morning, had nothing nearer their hearts than to up anchor and away to sea. This, I thought, it would be a fine thing to prevent, and now that I had seen how they left their watchmen unprovided with a boat, I thought it might be done with little risk. Down I had to wait for darkness and made a hearty meal of biscuit. It was a night out of 10,000 for my purpose. The fog had now buried all heaven. As the last rays of daylight dwindled and disappeared, absolute darkness settled down on Treasure Island, and when, at last, I shouldered the coracle and groped my way stumblingly out of the hollow where I had supped, There were but 2 points visible on the whole anchorage. One was the great fire on shore by which the defeated pirates lay carousing in the swamp. The other, a mere blur of light upon the darkness, indicated the position of the anchored ship. She had swung round to the ebb. Her bow was now towards me. The only lights on board were in the cabin. What I saw was merely a reflection on the fog of the strong rays that flowed from the stern window. The ebb had already run some time, and I had to wade through a long belt of swampy sand where I sank several times above the ankle before I came to the edge of the retreating water, and wading a little way in, with some strength and dexterity, set my coracle, keel downwards, on the surface. End of chapter 22. Chapter 23. The Ebb Tide Runs. The coracle, as I had ample reason to know before I was done with her, was a very safe boat for a person of my height and weight, both buoyant and clever in a seaway, but she was the most cross-grained, lopsided craft to manage. Do as you please, she always made more leeway than anything else, and turning round and round was the maneuver she was best at. Even Ben Gunn himself has admitted that she was queer to handle till you knew her way. Certainly I did not know her way. She turned in every direction but the one I was bound to go. The most part of the time we were broadside on, and I am very sure I never should have made the ship at all but for the tide. By good fortune, paddle as I pleased, the tide was still sweeping me down, and there lay the Hispaniola right in the fairway, hard to be missed. First she loomed before me like a blot of something yet blacker than darkness, then her spars and hulls began to shape, and the next moment, as it seemed, for the further I went the brisker grew the current of the ebb, I was alongside of her hawser and had laid hold. The hawser was as taut as a bowstring, so strong she pulled upon her anchor. All around the hull in the blackness the rippling current bubbled and chattered like a little mountain stream. One cut with my sea gully and the Hispaniola would go humming down the tide. So far so good, but it next occurred to me that my recollection that a taut hawser suddenly cut is a thing as dangerous as a kicking horse. 10 to 1 if I were so foolhardy as to cut the Hispaniola from her anchor, I and the coracle would be knocked clean out of the water. This brought me to a full stop, and if fortune had not again particularly favored on me, I should have had to abandon my design. But the light airs which had begun blowing from the south, east, and south had hauled round just after nightfall into the southwest. Just while I was meditating, a puff came, caught the Hispaniola, and forced her up into the current, and to my great joy, I felt the hawser slacken in my grip, and the hand by which I held it dip for a second underwater. With that, I made my mind up, took out my gully, opened it with my teeth, and cut one strand after another till the vessel only swung by 2. Then I lay quiet, waiting to sever these last when the strain should be once more lightened with a breath of wind. All this time I had heard the sound of loud voices from the cabin, but to say the truth, my mind had been so entirely taken up with other thoughts that I had scarcely given ear. Now, however, when I had nothing else to do, I began to pay more heed. One I recognized from the coxswain's, Israel Hands, that had been Flint's gunner in former days. The other was, of course, my friend of the nightcap. Both men were plainly the worse of drink, and they were still drinking, for even as I was listening, one of them, with a drunken cry, opened the stern window and threw out something, which I divined to be an empty bottle. But they were not only tipsy, it was plain they were furiously angry. Oaths flew like hailstones, and every now and then there came forth such an explosion as I thought was sure to end in blows. But each time the quarrel passed off, and the voices grumbled lower for a while, until the next crisis came, and in its turn passed away without result. On shore, I could see the glow of the great campfire burning warmly through the shoreside trees. Someone was singing a dull, old droning sailor song with a droop and a quaver at the end of every verse, and seemingly no end to it at all but the patience of the singer. I had heard it on the voyage more than once and remembered these words. But one man of a crew alive, what put to sea with 75? And I thought it was a ditty rather too dolefully appropriate for a company that had met such cruel losses in the morning. But indeed, from what I saw, all these buccaneers were as callous as the sea they sailed on. At last the breeze came, the schooner sidled and drew near in the dark. I felt the hawser slack once more, and with a good, tough effort cut the last fibers through. The breeze had but little action on the coracle, and as I was almost instantly swept against the bows of the Hispaniola, and at the same time the schooner began to turn upon her heel, spinning slowly end for end across the current. I wrought like a fiend, for I expected every moment to be swamped, and since I found I could not push the coracle directly off, I now shoved straight astern. At length I was clear of my dangerous neighbor, and just as I gave the last impulsion, my hands came across a light cord that was trailing overboard across the stern bulwark. Instantly I grabbed it. Why I should have done so I can hardly say. It was at first mere instinct. But once I had it in my hands and found it fast, curiosity began to get the upper hand, and I determined I should have one look through the cabin window. I pulled in hand over hand on the cord, and when I judged myself near enough, rose at infinite risk to about half my height, and thus commanded the roof and a slice of the interior of the cabin. By this time, the schooner and her little consort were gliding pretty swiftly through the water. Indeed, we had already fetched up level with the campfire. The ship was talking, as sailors say, loudly, treading the numerous ripples with an incessant weltering splash, and until I got my eye above the windowsill, I could not comprehend why the watchman had taken no alarm. One glance, however, was sufficient, and it was only one glance that I durst take from that unsteady skiff. It showed me Hans and his companion locked together in a deadly wrestle, each with a hand upon the other's throat. I dropped upon the thwart again, none too soon, for I was near overboard. I could see nothing for the moment but these two furious and crimsoned faces swaying together under the smoky lamp, and I shut my eyes to let them grow once more familiar with the darkness. The endless ballad had come to an end at last, and the whole diminished company about the campfire had broken into the chorus I had heard so often. 15 men on a dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. Drink and the devil had done for the rest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. I was just thinking how busy drink and the devil were at that very moment in the cabin of the Hispaniola when I was surprised by a sudden lurch of the coracle. At the same moment she yawed sharply and seemed to change her course. The speed, in the meantime, had greatly increased. I opened my eyes at once. All around me were little ripples, combing over with a sharp bristling sound and slightly phosphorescent. The Hispaniola herself, a few yards in whose wake I was still being whirled along, seemed to stagger in her course, and I saw her spars toss a little against the blackness of the night. Nay, as I looked longer, I was sure she was also wheeling to the southward. I glanced over my shoulder, and my heart jumped against my ribs. There, right behind me, was the glow of the campfire. The current had turned at right angles, sweeping round along with it the tall schooner and the little dancing coracle, ever quickening, ever bubbling higher, ever muttering louder. It went spinning through the narrows for the open sea. Suddenly, the schooner in front of me gave a violent yaw, turning perhaps through 20 degrees, and almost at the same moment one shout followed another from on board. I could hear feet pounding on the companion ladder, and I knew that the two drunkards had at last been interrupted in their quarrel and awakened to their sense of their disaster. I lay down flat in the bottom of that wretched skiff and devoutly recommended my spirit to its maker. At the end of the straits I made sure we must fall into some bars of raging breakers, where all my troubles would be ended speedily, and though I could perhaps bear to die, I could not bear to look upon my fate as it approached. So I must have lain for hours, continually beaten to and fro upon the billows, now and again wetted with flying sprays, and never ceasing to expect death at the next plunge. Gradually weariness grew upon me, a numbness and occasional stupor fell upon my mind, and even in the midst of my terrors, until sleep at last supervened, and in my sea-tossed coracle I lay and dreamed of home and the old Admiral Benbow. End of chapter 23. The Cruise of the Coracle, chapter 24. It was broad day when I awoke and found myself tossing at the southwest end of Treasure Island. The sun was up, but was still hid from me behind the great bulk of the spyglass, which on this side descended almost to the sea in formidable cliffs. Haulbow Line Head and Mizzenmast Hill were at my elbow, the hill bare and dark, the head bound with cliffs 40 or 50 feet high and fringed with great masses of fallen rock. I was scarce a quarter of a mile to seaward, and it was my first thought to paddle in and land. The notion was soon given over. Among the fallen rocks, the breakers spouted and bellowed. Loud reverberations, heavy sprays, flying and falling, succeeded one another from second to second, and I saw myself, if I ventured near, dashed to death upon the rough shore, or spending my strength in vail to scale the beetling crags. Nor was that all, for crawling together on flat tables of rocks or letting themselves drop into the sea with loud reports, I beheld huge slimy monsters, soft snails, as it were, of incredible bigness, 2 or 3 score of them together, making the rocks to echo with their barkings. I have understood since that these were sea lions and entirely harmless, but the look of them, added to the difficulty of the shore and the high running of the surf, was more than enough to disgust me of that landing place. I felt willing rather to starve at sea than to confront such perils. In the meantime, I had a better chance, as I suppose, before me. North of Haulbowline Head, the land runs in a long way, leaving at low tide a long stretch of yellow sand. To the north of that again there comes another cape, Cape of the Woods, as it was marked upon the chart, buried in tall green pines, which descended to the margin of the sea. I remembered what Silver had said about the current that sets northward along the whole west coast of Treasure Island, and seeing my position that I was already under its influence, I preferred to leave Haulbowline Head behind me and reserve my strength for an attempt to land upon the kindlier-looking Cape of the Woods. There was a great smooth swell upon the sea, the wind blowing steady and gentle from the south, and there was no contrariety. The wind blowing steadily and gentle from the south, and there was no contrariety between that and the current, and the billows rose and fell unbroken. Had it been otherwise, I must long ago have perished, but as it was, it's surprisingly how easy and securely my little and light boat could have ride. Often I still lay at the bottom and kept no more than an eye above the gunwale. I would see the big blue summit heaving close above me, yet the coracle would but bounce a little, dance as if on springs, and subside on the other side into the trough as lightly as a bird. I began after a little to grow very bold and sat up to try my skill at paddling. But even a small change in the disposition of the weight would produce violent changes in the behavior of the coracle, and I had hardly moved before the boat, giving up at once her gentle dancing movement, ran straight down a slip of water so steep that it made me giddy, and struck her nose with a spout of spray deep into the side of the next wave. I was drenched and terrified, and fell instantly back into my old position, whereupon the coracle seemed to find her head again, and led me as softly as before into the billows. It was plain she was not to be interfered with, and at that rate, since I could in no way influence her course, what hope had I left of reaching land? I began to be horribly frightened, but I kept my head for all that. First, moving with all care, I gradually bailed out the coracle with my sea cap. Then, getting my eye once more above the gunwale, I set myself to study how it was she managed to slip so quietly through the rollers. I found each wave, instead of the big, smooth, glossy mountain it looks from the shore, or from a vessel's deck, was for all the world like any range of hills on dry land, full of peaks and smooth places and valleys. The coracle, left to herself, turning from side to side, threaded, so to speak, her way through these lower parts, and avoided the steep slopes and higher toppling summits of the wave. Well now, thought I to myself, it is plain I must lie where I am, and not disturb the balance. But it is plain also that I can put the paddle over the side, and from time to time in smooth places give her a shove or two towards land. No sooner thought upon than done. There I lay on my elbows in the most trying attitude, and every now and again gave her a weak stroke or two to turn her head to shore. It was very tiring and slow work, yet I did visibly gain ground, and as we drew near the Cape of the Woods, though I saw I must infallibly miss that point, I had still made some 100 yards of easting. I was indeed close in. I could see the cool, green tree tops swaying together in the breeze, and I felt sure I should make the next promontory without fail. It was high time, for I now began to be tortured with thirst. The glow of the sun from above, its thousandfold reflections from the water, the seawater that fell and dried upon me, caking my very lips with salt, combined to make my throat burn and my brain ache. The sight of the trees so near at hand almost made me sick with longing, but the current had soon carried me past the point, and As the next reach of sea opened out, I beheld a sight that changed the nature of my thoughts. Right in front of me, not half a mile away, I beheld the Hispaniola under sail. I was sure, of course, that I should be taken, but I was so distressed for want of water that I scarcely knew whether to be glad or sorry at the thought, and long before I had come to a conclusion, surprise had taken the entire possession of my mind, and I could do nothing but stare and wonder. The Hispaniola was under her mainsail and two jibs, and the beautiful white canvas shone in the sun like snow or silver. When I first sighted her, all her sails were drawing. She was lying a course about northwest, and I presumed the men on board were going around the island on their way back to the anchorage. Presently, she began to fetch more and more to westward, so that I thought they had sighted me and were going in about the chase. At last, however, she fell right into the wind's eye, was taken dead back, and stood there a while helpless, with her sails shivering. "Clumsy fellows," said I. "They must still be drunk as owls." And I thought how Captain Smollett would have set them skipping. Meanwhile, the schooner gradually fell off and filled again upon another tack, sailed swiftly for a minute or two, and brought upon once more dead in the wind's eye. Again and again this was repeated, to and fro, up and down, north and south, east and west. The Hispaniola sailed by swoops and dashes, and at each repetition ended as she had begun, with idly flapping canvas. It began plain to me that nobody was steering. And if so, where were the men? Either they were dead, drunk, or they had deserted her. I thought, and perhaps if I could get on board, I might return the vessel to her captain. Onyx, Fur, and Anathema get the bone eye. We're starting a new Stream Raiders battle. Thank you for your units. Good luck on the next battle. Get them in. It also looks like we're going to get a new marbles here in just a second. Good timing. And he gets the win, but not a record breaker. Let's try it again. Got a couple more times tonight. We got to beat it tonight because season starts tomorrow. Play to play. Get your balls on the track. Get your balls on the track. 2 minutes. Let's try to break this world record. You can get free subs to the channel. If you break the local record, I'll give you a free sub for a month. If you break the world record, I'll give you a tier 3 sub. Or I'll give you a tier 1 sub for three months. I'm ready. Are you ready? Are you ready, kids? Des out here rocking out. Are you going to try to place? I'd like to get top 50 again. You know, we got top 50 last time. Let's try to get top 50 again. It'd be nice to get higher, but there's going to be a couple days that I won't be able to work. I mean, won't be able to stream because of, weddings, and we lost Tuesday, which we made lots of points on Tuesday. So top 50 might not even be realistic. It might not even be realistic. But maybe some people, some marblers that know us now, because we made top 50 last time, will come and we'll get more racers. And that'll make up for our lack of races. But yeah, we'll see what we can do. Thank you, Annie, for the bitty bitty bitties. And let's get this race started, and let's get back to our... Now, I know there's a lot of, like, boat talk in this, and I don't really know the boat talk either, but I know what they're talking about, you know? Like, he cut the anchor of the ship. It's listing. He can't make any headway because of the way the tides are working in and out of the island. So he's making his way slowly east and in, towards the island eastward. A long, long, slow jaunt to get away from the crushing rocks and the tides that are bashing in and out. He sees the Hispaniola that he has cut free listing still, and it looks like nobody's steering her. And so he's getting an idea in his head. The current was bearing coracle and schooner southward at an equal rate. As for the latter's sailing, it was so wild and intermittent, and she hung each time so long in irons, that she certainly gained nothing if she did not even lose. If only I dared to sit up and paddle, I made sure I could overhaul her. The scheme had an air of adventure that inspired me, and the thought of the water breaker beside the fore companion doubled my growing courage. Up I got, was welcomed almost instantly by another cloud of spray, but this time stuck to my purpose and set myself, with all my strength and caution, to paddle after the unsteered Hispaniola. Once I shipped a sea so heavy that I had to stop and bail with my heart fluttering like a bird, but gradually I got into the way of the thing and guided my coracle among the waves, and with only now and then a blow upon her bows and a dash of foam in my face. There's a work message. Hold on. All right, I can get back to that later. That's not immediately imperative. But a gig in September, we got to respond quick. There aren't a ton of September dates open. That's one of my favorite venues, so I'm gonna get to that. Though it's probably inside. The outside is my favorite part. The inside it's okay. They have great food there too. All right. I was now gaining rapidly on the schooner. I could see the brass glisten on the tiller as it banged about, and still no soul appeared on her decks. I could not choose but suppose she was deserted. If not, the men were lying drunk below, where I might batten them down, perhaps, and do what I chose with the ship. For some time, she had been doing the worst thing possible for me, standing still. She headed nearly due south, yawing, of course, all the time. Each time she fell off, her sails partly filled, and these brought her, in a moment, right to the wind again. I said this was the worst thing possible for me, for helpless as she looked in the situation, with the canvas crackling like a cannon, and the blocks trundling and banging on the deck, she still continued to run away from me, not only with the speed of the current, but with the whole amount of her leeway, which was naturally great. But now, at last, I had my chance. The breeze fell for some seconds, very low, and the current gradually turned her. The Hispaniola revolved slowly around her center, and at last presented me her stern, with the cabin window still gaping open and the lamp over the table still burning on into the day. The mainsail hung drooped like a banner. She was stock still but for the current. For the last little while I had even lost, but now redoubling my efforts, I begun once more to overhaul the chase. I was not 100 yards from her when the wind came again in a clap. She filled on the port tack and was off again, stooping and skimming like a swallow. My first impulse was one of despair, but my second was towards joy. Round she came, till she was broadside to me. round still till she had covered a half and then 2/3 and then 3/4 of the distance that separated us. I could see the waves boiling right under her forefoot. Immensely tall she looked to me from my low station in the coracle, and then all of a sudden I began to comprehend. I had scarce time to think, scarce time to act and save myself. I was on the summit of one swell when the schooner came swooping over the next. The bowsprit was over my head. I sprang to my feet and leaped, stamping the coracle underwater. With one hand, I caught the jib boom while my foot was lodged between the stay and the brace, and as I still clung there panting, a dull blow told me that the schooner had charged down upon and struck the coracle, and that I was left without retreat on the Hispaniola. End of chapter 24. Chapter 25. I strike the Jolly Roger. I had scarce gained a position on the bowsprit when the flying jib flapped and filled upon the other tack with a report like a gun. The schooner trembled to her keel under the reverse, but next moment the other sail still drawing, the jib flapped back again and hung idle. This had nearly tossed me off into the sea, but now I had lost no time, crawled back along the bowsprit, and tumbled head foremost onto the deck. I was on the lee side of the forecastle in the mainsail, which was still drawing, concealed from me a certain portion of the afterdeck. Not a soul was to be seen. The planks, which had not been swabbed since the mutiny, bore the print of many feet, and an empty bottle, broken by the neck, tumbled to and fro like a living thing in the scuppers. Suddenly the Hispaniola came right into the wind. The jibs behind me cracked aloud. The rudder slammed to. The whole ship gave a sickening heave and shudder, and at the same moment the main boom swung inboard, the sheet groaning in the blocks, and showed me the lee afterdeck. There were the two watchmen, sure enough. Red Cap on his back, as stiff as a handspike, with his arms outstretched out like those of a crucifix, and his teeth showing through his open lips. Israel Hands popped against the bulwarks, his chin on his chest, his hands lying low before him on the desk, his face as white under its tan as a tallow candle. For a while the ship kept bucking and sidling like a vicious horse, the sails fitting, now on one tack, now on another, and the boom swinging to and fro till the mast groaned aloud under a strain. Now and again, too, there would come a cloud of light sprays over the bulwark, and a heavy blow of the ship's bow against the swell. So much heavier weather was made of it by this great rigged ship than by my homemade lopsided coracle, now gone to the bottom of the sea. Every jump of the schooner, Red Cap slipped to and fro, but what was ghastly to behold, neither his attitude nor his fixed, teeth-disclosing grin was anyway disturbed by this rough usage. At every jump, too, Hands appeared still more to sink into himself and settle down upon his deck, his feet sidling even further out and his whole body canting towards the stern, so that his face became little by little hid from me, and at last I could see nothing beyond his ear and the frayed ringlet of one whisker. And at the same time I observed round both of them splashes of dark blood upon the planks, and began to feel sure that they had killed each other in their drunken wrath. While I was thus looking and wondering in a calm moment when the ship was still, Israel Hands turned partly round, and with a low moan writhed himself back to a position in which I had seen him first. The moan, which told of pain and deadly weakness, and the way in which his jaw hung open, went right to my heart. But when I remembered the talk I had overheard from the apple barrel, all pity left me. I walked aft until I reached the mainstay. "Come aboard, Mr. Hands," I said ironically. He rolled his eyes around heavily, but he was too far gone to express surprise. All he could do was to utter one word: "Brandy." It occurred to me there was no time to lose, and dodging the boom as it once more lurched across the deck, I slipped aft and down the companion stairs into the cabin. It was such a scene of confusion as you can hardly fancy. All the lock-fast places had been broken open in quest of the chart. The floor was thick with mud where ruffians had sat down to drink or consult after waiting in the marshes around their camp. The bulkheads, all painted in clear white, had beaded rounded with gilt, bore a pattern of dirty hands. Dozens of empty bottles clinked together in corners to the rolling of the ship. One of the doctor's medical books lay open on the table, half of the leaves gutted out, I suppose for pipe lights. In the midst of all this, a lamp still cast a smoky glow, obscure and brown as umber. I went into the cellar. All the barrels were gone, and all of the bottles, a most surprisingly number, had been drunk out and thrown away. Certainly, since the mutiny began, not a man of them could have been sober. Foraging about, I found a bottle with some brandy left for Hands, and for myself I routed out some biscuit, some pickled fruit, a great bunch of raisins, and a piece of cheese. With these, I came on deck, put down my own stock behind the rudderhead, and, well out of the coxswain's reach, went forward to the water breaker and had a good, deep drink of water. And then, not until then, gave Hans his brandy. He must have drunk a gill before he took a bottle from his mouth. "Aye," he said. "By thunder, I wanted some of that." And as I already sat down in my corner and begun to eat. "Much hurt?" I asked him. He grunted, or rather I might say he barked. "If that doctor was aboard," he said, "I'd be right enough in a couple of turns, but I don't have no matter of luck, you see, and that's what's the matter with me. As for that swab, he's as good as dead, he is," indicating the man with the red hat. "He wasn't no seaman anyhow. And where might you been from?" "Well," said I, "I've come aboard to take possession of this ship, Mr. Hans, and you'll please regard me as your captain until further notice." He looked at me sourly enough, but said nothing. Some of the color had come back into his cheeks, and though he still looked very sick, he still continued to slip out and settle down about the ship banged about. "By and by," I continued. "By and by," I continued. "I can't have these colors, Mr. Hans, and by your leave, I'll strike 'em. Better than none than these." And again dodging the boom, I ran to the color lines, handed down their cursed black flag, and chucked it overboard. "God save the king," said I, waving my cap, "and there's an end to Captain Silver." He watched me keenly and slyly, his chin all the while on his breast. "I reckon," he said at last, "I reckon, Captain Hawkins, that you kind of want to get ashore now. Suppose we talks." "Why, yes," said I, "with all my heart, Mr. Hans, say on," and I went back to my meal with a good appetite. "This man," he began, nodding feebly at the corpse, "O'Brien was his name, a rank Irelander. This man and me got the canvas on her, meaning for to sail her back. Well, he's dead now, he is, as dead as bilge, and who's to sail the ship I don't see. With that I gives you a hint, and you ain't that man as far as I can tell. Now look for you. You give me food and drink and an old scarf for your handkerchief to tie my wound up, you do, and I'll tell you how to sail her. And that's about square all around, I take it." "I'll tell you one thing," says I. "I'm not going back to Captain Kidd's anchorage. I mean to get into North Inlet and beach her quietly there." "Ah, to be sure you did," he cried. "Why, I ain't such an infernal lubber after all. I can see, can't I? I tried my fling, I have, and I've lost. And it's you as the wind of me. North Inlet, why, I had no choice out I. I'd help you sail her up to Execution Dock, by thunder, so I would." Well, as it seemed to me, there was some sense in this. We struck our bargain on the spot. In 3 minutes, I had the Hispaniola sailing easily before the wind along the coast of Treasure Island, with good hopes of turning the northern point ere noon, and beating down again as far as North Inlet before high water, when we might beach her safely and wait till the subsiding tide permitted us to land. Then I lashed the tiller and went below to my own chest, where I got a soft silk handkerchief of my mother's. With this, and with my aid, Hans bound up the great bleeding stab he had received in the thigh, and after he had eaten a little and had a swallow or two more of the brandy, he began to pick up visibly, sat straighter up, spoke louder and clearer, and he looked in every way another man. The breeze served us admirably. We skimmed before it like a bird, the coast of the island flashing by and the view changing every minute. Soon we were past the highlands and bowling beside low, sandy country sparsely dotted with dwarf pines, and soon we were beyond that again, and had turned the corner of the rocky hill that ends the island on the north. I was greatly elated with my new command and pleased with the bright, sunshiny weather and these different prospects of the coast. I now had plenty of water and good things to eat, and my conscience, which had smitten me hard for my desertion, was quieted by the great conquest I had made. I should, I think, have had nothing left me to desire but for the eyes of the coxswain as they followed me derisively about the deck, and that odd smile that appeared continually on his face. It was a smile that had in it something both pain and weakness, a haggard old man's smile, but there was, besides that, a grain of derision, a shadow of treachery, in his expression as he craftily watched and watched and watched me at my work. End of chapter 25. Chapter 26. Israel Hands. The wind, serving us to a desire, now hauled into the west. We could run so much the easier for the northeast corner of the island to the mouth of the North Inlet. Only, as we had no power to anchor, and dared not beach her till the tide had flowed a good deal further, time hung on our hands. The coxswain told me how to lay the ship to. After a good many trials, I succeeded, and we both sat in silence over another meal. "Captain," he said at length, with the same uncomfortable smile, "here's my old shipmate O'Brien. Suppose you was to leave him overboard. I ain't particular as a rule, and I don't take no blame for settling his hash, but I don't reckon him ornamental now, do you?" "I'm not strong enough, and I don't like the job, and there he lies for me," said I. "This is an unlucky ship, this Hispaniola, Jim," he went on, blinking. "There's a power of a man killed in this Hispaniola, a sight of a poor seaman dead, and gone since you and me took it up Bristol. I never seen such dirty luck, says I. There was not here this O'Brien now. He's dead, ain't he? Well, now I ain't no scholar, and you're as a lad as I can read and figure. And to put it straight, did you take it as a dead man is dead for good, or do he come alive again?" "You can kill the body, Mr. Hands, but not the spirit. You must know that already," I replied. "O'Brien is in another world and maybe watching us." "Ah," says he, "that's unfortunate. Appears as if killing bodies was a waste of time. Howsomever, spirits don't reckon much for much, by what I seen. I'll chance it with the spirits, Jim. And now you spoken up free, and I'll take it kind if you do step down from the cabin and get me a shiver me timbers. I can't even name on it. Well, you get me a bottle of wine, Jim. This here brandy's too strong for my head." Now the coxswain's hesitation seemed to be unnatural, and as for the notion of his preferring wine to brandy, I entirely disbelieved it. The whole story was a pretext. He wanted me to leave the deck, so much was plain, but with what purpose I could in no way imagine. His eyes never met mine. They kept wandering to and fro, up and down, now with a look to the sky, now with a flitting glance upon the dead O'Brien, and all the time he kept smiling and putting his tongue out in the most guilty, embarrassed manner, so that a child could have told him he was bent on some deception. I was prompt with my answer, however, for I saw where my advantage lay, and that with a fellow so densely stupid I could easily conceal my suspicions to the end. "Some wine?" I said. "Far better. Will you have white or red?" "Well, I reckon it's about the blessed same to me, shipmate," he replied. "So it's strong and plenty of it. What's the odds?" "All right," I answered. "I'll bring you port, Mr. Hands, but I'll have to dig for it." With that, I scuttled down the companion with all the noise I could, slipped off my shoes, ran quietly along the sparred galley, mounted the forecastle ladder, and popped my head out of the fore companion. I knew he would not expect to see me there, yet I took every precaution possible, and certainly the worst of my suspicions proved too true. He had risen from his position to his hands and knees, and though his leg obviously hurt him pretty sharply when he moved, for I could hear him stifle a groan, yet it was at a good rattling rate that he trailed himself along the deck. In half a minute he had reached the port scudders and picked out of a coil of rope a long knife, or rather a short dirk, discolored to the hilt with blood. He looked upon it for a moment, thrusting forth his underjaw, tried the point on his hand, and then, hastily concealing it in the bosom of his jacket, trundled back again into his old place against the bulwark. That was all I was required to know. Israel could move about. He was now armed, and if he had been at so much trouble to get rid of me, it was plain that I was meant to be the victim. What he would do afterwards, whether he would try to crawl across the islands from North Inlet to the camp among the swamps, or whether he would fire Long Tom, trusting that his own companions would come first to help him, was, of course, more than I could say. Yet I felt sure that I could trust him in one point, since it was in our interest to jump together, and that was in the disposition of the schooner. We both desired to have her stranded safe enough in a sheltered place, and so that when the time came, she could be got off again with as little labor and danger as might be. And until that was done, I considered my life would certainly be spared. While I was thus turning the business over in my mind, I had not been idle with my body. I had stolen back to the cabin, slipped once more into my shoes, and laid my hand at random upon a bottle of wine, and now, with this for an excuse, I made my appearance on the deck. Hands lay as I left him, all fallen together in a bundle, with his eyelids lowered, as though he were too weak to bear the light. He looked up, however, at my coming, knocked the neck off the bottle like a man who had done the same thing often, and took a good swig, with his favorite toast, "Here's luck," and then he lay quiet for a little, and then, pulling out a stick of tobacco, begged me to cut him a quid. "Cut me off a junk of that," says he, "for I haven't no knife and hardly any strength enough so as to be had. Ah, Jim, I reckon I misstays. Cut me a quid as likely as that last, lad, for I'm on my long home, and make no mistake." "Well," said I, "I'll cut you some tobacco, but if I was you and thought myself so badly, I would go to my prayers like a Christian man." "Why," said he, "now you tell me why." "Why?" I cried. "You were asking me just now about the dead. You've broken your trust. You've lived in sin and lies and blood. There's a man you've killed lying at your feet at this moment, and here you ask me why? For God's mercy, Mr. Hans, that's why." I spoke with a little heat, thinking of the bloody dirk he had hidden in his pocket and designed in his ill thoughts to end me with. He, for his part, took a great draught of the wine and spoke with the most unusual solemnity. "For 30 years, he said, I sailed the seas, and seen good and bad, better and worse, fair weather and foul, provisions running out, knives going, and what not. Well, now, I tell you, I never seen good come of goodness yet. Him as strikes first is my fancy. Dead men don't bite. There's my views, amen, so be it. And now you look here," he said, suddenly changing his tone. "We've had about enough of this foolery. The tide's made good enough by now. You can just take my orders, Captain Harkins, and we'll sail slap in and be done with it." All told, we had scarce 2 miles to run, but the navigation was delicate, and entrance to this northern anchorage was not only narrow and shallow, but lay east and west, so that the schooner must be nicely handled to be got in. I think I was a good, prompt subaltern, and I'm very sure this Hans was an excellent pilot. For we went about and dodged in, shaving the banks with a certainty and a neatness that was a pleasure to behold. Scarcely had we passed the heads before the land closed around us. The shores of North Inlet were as thickly wooded as those of the southern anchorage, but the space was longer and narrower and more like what in truth it was, the estuary of a river. Right before us at the southern end, we saw the wreck of a ship in the last stages of dilapidation. It had been a great vessel of 3 masts, but had laid so long exposed to the injuries of the weather that it was hung about with great webs of dripping seaweed, and on the deck of it the shore brushes had taken root and now flourished thick with flowers. It was a sad sight, but it showed us the anchorage was calm. "Now," said Hans, "look there. There's a bit for a beach to ship in. Fine flat sand, never a cast paw, trees all around it, and flowers a-bloomin' like a garden of that old ship." "And once beached," I inquired, "how shall we get her off again?" "Why so," he replied. "You take a line ashore, there on the other side of the water. Take a turn about one of them big pines, bring it back. Take a turn of the capstan and lie to for the tide. Come high water, our hands take a pull upon the line, and off she comes sweet as nature. And now, boy, you stand by, we're near the bit now, and she's too much way on her. Starboard a little, so steady, starboard. Larboard a little, steady, steady." So he issued his commands while I breathlessly obeyed, till all of a sudden he cried, "Now, my hearty luff!" And I put the helm hard up, and the Hispaniola swung around rapidly and ran stem on for the low wooded shore. The excitement of these last maneuvers had somewhat interfered with the watch I kept hitherto sharply enough upon the coxswain. Even then I was still so much interested waiting for the ship to touch that I had quite forgot the peril that hung over my head, and stood craning over the starboard bulwarks and watching the ripples spreading wide before the bows. I might have fallen without a struggle for my life had not a sudden disquietude seized upon me and made me turn my head. Perhaps I had heard a creak or seen his shadow moving with the tail of my eye. Perhaps it was an instinct like a cat's, but sure enough, when I looked around, there was Hans, already halfway towards me with the dirk in his right hand. We must have both cried out aloud when our eyes met, but while mine was a shrill cry of terror, his was a roar of fury like a charging bull's. And at the same instant he threw himself forward, and I leapt sideways toward the bows. As I did so, I left hold of the tiller, which sprang sharp to leeward, and I think this saved my life, for it struck Hans across the chest and stopped him for a moment dead. Before he could recover, I was safe out of the corner where he had me trapped, with all the deck to dodge about. Just forward of the mainmast, I stopped, drew a pistol from my pocket, took a cool aim, though he had already turned and was once more coming directly after me, and drew the trigger. The hammer fell, but there followed neither flash nor sound. The priming was useless with seawater. I cursed myself for my neglect. Why had I not, long before, reprimed and reloaded my only weapons? Then I should not have been, as now, a mere fleeing sheep before this butcher. Wounded as he was, it was wonderful how fast he could move, his grizzled hair tumbling over his face and his face itself as red as the red ensign with his haste and fury. I had no time to try my other pistol, nor indeed much inclination, for I was sure it would be useless. One thing I saw plainly. I must not simply retreat before him, or he would speedily hold me boxed into the bows as a moment since he so nearly boxed me into the stern. Once so caught, and 9 or 10 inches of the blood-stained dirk would be my last experience on this side of eternity. I placed my palms against the mainmast, which was of a goodish bigness, and waited every nerve upon the stretch. Seeing that I meant to dodge, he also paused, and a moment or two passed in feints on his part, and a corresponding movements upon mine. It was such a game as I had often played at home about the rocks of Black Hill Cove, but never before, you may be sure, with such a wildly beating heart as now. Still, as I say it, it was a boy's game, and as I thought I could hold my own against an elderly seaman with a wounded thigh. Indeed, my courage had begun to rise so high that I allowed myself a few darting thoughts on what would be the end of the affair, and while I certainly saw that I could spin it out for long, I saw no hope of any ultimate escape. Well, while things stood thus, suddenly the Hispaniola struck, staggered, ground for an instant in the sand, and then, swift as a blow, canted over to the port side till the deck stood at about 45 degrees, and about a puncheon of water splashed in the scupper holes and lay in the pool between the deck and the bulwark. We were both of us capsized in an instant, and both of us rolled almost together into the scuppers, the dead red Cap, with his arms still spread out, tumbling swiftly after us. So near we were indeed that my head came against the coxswain's foot with a crack that made my teeth rattle. Blow and all, I was the first to foot again, for hands had got involved with the dead body. The sudden canting of the ship had made the deck no place for running on. I had to find some new way of escape, and that upon the instant, for my foe was almost touching me. Quick as I thought, I sprang into the mizzen shrouds, rattled up hand over hand, and did not draw a breath till I was seated on the cross trees. I had been saved by being prompt. The dirk had struck not half a foot below me as I pursued my upward flight, and there stood Israel Hands with his mouth open and his face upturned to mine, a perfect statue of surprise and disappointment. Now that I had a moment to myself, I lost no time in changing the priming of my pistol, and then, having one ready for service, and to make assurance doubly sure, I proceeded to draw the load of the other and recharge it afresh from the beginning. My new employment struck Hands all of a heap. He began to see the dice going against him, and after an obvious hesitation, he also hauled himself heavily into the shrouds, and with the dirk in his teeth, began slowly and painfully to mount. It cost him no end of time and groans to haul his wounded leg behind him, and I had quietly finished my arrangements before he was much more than a third of the way up. Then, with a pistol in either hand, I addressed him. "One more step, Mr. Hands," said I, "and I'll blow your brains out. Dead men don't bite, you know," I added, with a chuckle. He stopped instantly. I could see by the working of his face that he was trying to think, and the process was so slow and laborious that, in my newfound security, I laughed aloud. At last, with a swallow or two, he spoke, his face still wearing the same expression of extreme perplexity. In order to speak, he had to take the dagger from his mouth, but in all else, he remained unmoved. Papa Keldon and Onyx get the bone-eye? Or starting a new Stream Raiders battle? Thank you for your units. Good luck on the next battle. What's up, Keldon? "Jim," says he, "I reckon we fouled, you and me, and we'll have to sign articles. I'd have had you but for that lurch. But I don't have no luck, not I, and I reckon I'll have to strike, which comes hard, you see, for a master mariner's to a ship's yunker like you, Jim." I was drinking in his words and smiling away, as conceited as a cock upon a wall, when, all in a breath, back went his right hand over his shoulder. Something sang like an arrow through the air, and I felt a blow and then a sharp pang, and there I was, pinned by the shoulder to the mast. In the horror, pain, and surprise of the moment, I could scarce say it was by my own volition, and I am sure it was without conscious aim. Both of my pistols went off, and both escaped out of my hands. They did not fall alone. With a choked cry, the coxswain loosed his grip upon the shrouds and plunged headfirst into the water. Yeah, probably killed him. End of chapter 26, and end of Israel Hands. Hear, hear. It's a pirate's life for him. Chapter 27, Pieces of 8. O wing to the cant of the vessel. The masts hung far out over the water, and from my perch on the cross trees I had nothing below me but the surface of the bay. Hans, who was not so far up, was in consequence nearer to the ship and fell between me and the bulwarks. He rose once to the surface in a lather of foam and blood, and then sank again for good. And as the water settled, I could see him lying huddled together on the clean, bright sand in the shadow of the vessel's sides. A fish or two whipped past his body. Sometimes, by the quivering of the water, he appeared to move a little, as if he were trying to rise, but he was dead enough, for all that, being both shot and drowned, and was food for fish in the very place where he had designed my slaughter. I was no sooner certain of this thing than I began to feel sick, faint, and terrified. The hot blood was running over my back and chest. The dirk, where it had pinned my shoulder to the mast, seemed to burn like a hot iron. Yet it was not so much these real sufferings that distressed me, for these, it seemed to me, I could bear without a murmur. It was the horror I had upon my mind of falling from the cross trees into that still green water beside the body of the coxswain. I clung with both hands till my nails ached, and I shut my eyes as if to cover up the peril. Gradually my mind came back to me, my pulses quieted down to a more natural time, and I was once more in possession of myself. It was my first thought to pluck forth the dirk, but either it struck too hard or my nerve failed me, and I desisted with a violent shudder. Oddly enough, that very shudder did the business. The knife, in fact, had come the nearest in the world to missing me altogether. It held me by a mere pinch of skin, and this shudder tore away. The blood ran down the faster, to be sure, but I was my own master again, and only tacked to the mast by my coat and shirt. These last I broke through with a sudden jerk, and then regained the deck by the starboard shrouds. For nothing in the world would I have again ventured, shaken as I was, upon the overhanging port shrouds, from which Israel had so lately fallen. I went below, and did what I could for my wound. It pained me a good deal, and still bled freely, but it was neither deep nor dangerous, nor did it greatly gall me when I used my arm. Then I looked around me, and as the ship was now, in a sense, my own, I began to think of clearing from it its last passenger, the dead man O'Brien. He had pitched, as I have said, against the bulwarks, where he lay like some horrible, ungainly sort of puppet, life-sized indeed, but how different from life's color or life's comeliness. In that position I could easily have my way with him, and as the habit of tragical adventures had worn off almost all of my terror for the dead, I took him by the waist as if he had been a sack of bran, and with one good heave tumbled him overboard. He went in with a sounding plunge. The red cap came off and remained floating on the surface, and as soon as the splash subsided, I could see him and Israel lying side by side, both wavering with the tremulous movement of the water. O'Brien, though still quite a young man, was very bald, and there he lay with his bald head across the knees of the man who had killed him, and the quick fishes steering to and fro over both. No world record this time either, guys. Let's try it. I think this might be the last time we're trying it tonight. I think this might be the last time we're trying it until next Tuesday. Play to play. Get him in, get him in, get him on, get him in. This is going to be the last chance to beat this world record until next Tuesday. Two minutes. Balls on the track. Balls on the track. Why are we getting double commands? Why is the moo doubling? Do I have two chatbot? I have two Streamlab chatbots open. That's the problem. I don't know what that's all about. Let's make it one. Let's do one. Yeah, the moo was doubling. The moo was doubling earlier. Commands may not work for a minute. Maybe I killed the wrong one. Either way, we still have one open. Whatever. It'll be good for next time. I was now alone upon the ship. The tide had just turned. The sun was within so few degrees of setting that already the shadow of the pines upon the western shore began to reach height across the anchorage and fall in patterns upon the deck. The evening breeze had sprung up, and though it was well warded off by the hill with the two peaks upon the east, the cordage had begun to sing a little softly to itself, and the idle sails to rattle to and fro. I began to see a danger to the ship. The jibs I had speedily doused and brought tumbling to the deck, but the mainsail was a harder matter. Of course, when the schooner canted over and the boom had swung overboard, and the cap of it had a foot or two of sail sung even under water, I thought this made it still more dangerous, yet the strain was so heavy that I half feared to meddle. At last I got my knife and cut the halyards. The peak dropped instantly, and a great belly of loose canvas floated broad upon the water, and since, pull as I like, I could not bludge the downhaul, that was the extent of what I could accomplish. For the rest, the Hispaniola must trust to luck like myself. By this time, the whole anchorage had fallen into shadow. The last rays, I remember, falling through a glade of the wood and shining bright as jewels on the flowery mantle of the wreck. It began to be chill. The tide was rapidly fleeting seaward, the schooner settling more and more on her beam ends. I scrambled forward and looked over. It seemed shallow enough, and holding the cut hawser in both hands for a last security, I let myself drop softly overboard. The water scarcely reached my waist. The sand was firm and covered with ripple marks, and I waded ashore in great spirits, leaving the Hispaniola on her side with her mainsail trailing wide upon the surface of the bay. About the same time, the sun went fairly down, and the breeze whistled low in the dusk among the tossing pines. At last, I was off the sea, nor had I returned thence empty-handed. There lay the schooner, clear at last from buccaneers and ready for our own men to board and get to sea again. I had nothing nearer my fancy than to get home to the stockade and boast of my achievements. Possibly I might be blamed a bit for my truancy, but the recapture of the Hispaniola was a clinching answer, and I had hoped that even Captain Smollett would confess I had not lost my time. So thinking, and in famous spirits, I began to set my face homeward for the blockhouse and my companions. I remembered that the most easterly of the rivers which drain into Captain Kidd's anchorage ran from the two-peaked hill upon my left, and I bent my course in that direction that I might pass the stream while it was small. The wood was pretty open, and keeping along the lower spurs, I had soon turned the corner of that hill, and not long after waded to the mid-calf across the watercourse. This brought me near to where I encountered Ben Gunn, the maroon, and I walked more circumspectly, keeping an eye on every side. The dusk had come nigh hand completely, and as I opened out the cleft between two peaks, I became aware of a wavering glow against the sky where, as I judged, the man of the island was cooking his supper before a roaring fire. And yet I wondered in my heart that he should show himself so careless, for if I could see his radiance, might it not reach the eyes of Silver himself where he camped upon the shore among the marches? Gradually the night fell blacker. It was all I could do to guide myself even roughly towards my destination. The double hill behind me and the spyglass on my right hand loomed faint and fainter. The stars were few and pale, and in the low ground where I wandered, I kept tripping among bushes and rolling into sandy pits. Suddenly a kind of brightness fell about me. I looked. A pale glimmer of moonbeams had lightened on the summit of the top spyglass. And soon after I saw something broad and silvery moving low down upon the trees, and and knew the moon had risen. That's right. There's so many sound commands now. So, though I may, in future ones, turn some commands off, just so we don't. That's sheer luck that you hit like 5 commands. With this to help me, I passed rapidly over what remained to me of my journey, and sometimes walking, sometimes running, impatiently drew near to the stockade. Yet, as I began to thread the grove that lies before it, I was not so thoughtless but that I slacked my pace and went a trifle warily. It would have been a poor end of my adventures to get shot down by my own party in mistake. The moon was climbing higher and higher. Its light began to fall here and there in masses, and through the more open districts of the wood, and right in front of me, a glow of a different color appeared among the trees. It was red and hot, and now and again it was a little darkened, as if it were the embers of a bonfire smoldering. For the life of me, I could not think what it might be. At last I came right down upon the borders of the clearing. The western end was already steeped in moonshine. In the rest, and the blockhouse itself still lay in a black shadow checkered with long silvery streaks of light. On the other side of the house, an immense fire had burned itself into clear embers and shed a steady and reverberation contrasted strongly with the mellow paleness of the moon. There was not a soul stirring, nor the sound beside the noises of the breeze. I stopped with much wonder in my heart, and perhaps a little terror also. It had not been our way to build great fires. We were, indeed, by the captain's orders, somewhat niggardly of firewood, and I began to fear that something had gone wrong while I was absent. I stole round the eastern end, keeping close in shadow, and at the convenient place where the darkness was thickest, crossed the palisade. To make assurance surer, I got upon my hands and knees and crawled without a sound towards the corner of the house. As I drew nearer, my heart was suddenly and greatly lightened. It is not a pleasant noise in itself, and I have often complained of it at other times, but just then it was like music to hear my friends snoring together so loud and peaceful in their sleep. The sea cry of the watch, then beautiful "All's well," never fell more reassuringly upon my ear. In the meantime, there was no doubt of one thing: they kept an infamous bad watch. If it had been Silver and his lads that were now creeping in on them, not a soul would have been seen daybreak. That's what it was, thought I, to have the captain wounded, and again I blamed myself sharply for leaving them in that danger with so few to mount guard. By this time I had got to the door and stood up. All was dark within, so that I could distinguish nothing by the eye. As for sounds, there was the steady drone of the snores and a small occasional noise, a flickering or peckering that I could in no way account for. With my arms before me, I walked steadily in. I should lie down in my own place, I thought, with a silent chuckle, and enjoy their faces when they found me in the morning. My foot struck something yielding. It was a sleeper's leg, and as he turned and groaned, but without waking, and then, all of a sudden, a shrill voice broke forth out in the darkness. "Pieces of 8, pieces of 8, pieces of 8, pieces of 8, pieces of 8, and so forth, without pause or change, like the clacking of a tiny mill. Silver's green parrot, Captain Flint. It was she whom I had heard pecking at a piece of bark. It was she, keeping better watch than any human being, who thus announced my arrival with her wearisome refrain. I had no time left to recover. At the sharp, clipping tone of the parrot, the sleepers awoke and sprang up with a mighty oath. The voice of Silver cried, "Who goes?" I turned to run, struck violently against one person, recoiled, and ran full into the arms of a second, who for his part closed upon and held me tight. "Bring a torch, Dick," said Silver, when my capture was thus assured, and one of the men left the log house and presently returned with a lighted brand. End of part 5. We'll go probably a couple more chapters. Probably just a couple more chapters here. Part 6. Captain Silver. Chapter 28. In the enemy's camp. The red glare of the torch lighting up the interior of the blockhouse showed me the worst of my apprehensions realized. The pirates were in possession of the house and stores. There was the cask of cognac. There were the pork and bread, as before, and, what tenfold increased my horror, not a sign of any prisoner. I could only judge that all had perished, and my heart smote me sorely that I had not been there to perish with them. There were 6 of the buccaneers, all told. Not another man was left alive. 5 of them were on their feet, flushed and swollen suddenly, called out of the first sleep of drunkenness. The sixth had only risen up on his elbow. He was deadly pale and blood-stained bandage round his head, told that he had recently been wounded and still more recently dressed. I remembered the man who had been shot and had run back among the woods in the great attack, and doubted not that this was he. The parrot sat, preening in her plumage, on Long John's shoulder. He himself, I thought, looked somewhat paler and more stern than I was used to. He still wore that fine broadcloth suit in which he had fulfilled his mission, but it was bitterly the worse for wear, daubed with clay and torn with the sharp briars of the wood. "So," says he, "here's Jim Hawkins, shiver me timbers, dropped in like hay. Well, come, I take that friendly." And thereupon he sat down across the brandy cask and began to fill a pipe. "Give me a load of the link, Dick," said he, and then when he had a good light, "That'll do, lad. Stick the glim in the wood heap, and you gentlemen bring yourselves to. You mustn't stand up for Hawkins. He'll excuse you may late to that. And so, Jim," stopping the tobacco, "here you were, and quite a pleasant surprise for poor old John. I see you were smart when first I set eyes upon you, but this here gets away from me clean, it do." To all this, as may well be supposed, I made no answer. They had set me with my back against the wall, and I stood there looking Silver in the face, plucky enough, I hope, to all outward appearance, but with black despair in my heart. Silver took a whiff or two of his pipe with great composure and then ran on again. "Now, you see, Jim, this'll be as you are here. I'll give you a piece of my mind. I've always liked you, I have, and for a lad of spirit and the picture of my own health when I was a young and handsome, and I'm always taking you to jine and that take your share and die a gentleman, and now my cocky I've got to. Captain Smollett's a fine seaman, and as I'll own up to any day, but stiff on discipline. Duty is duty, says he, and right he is. Just to keep you clear of the captain. The doctor himself has gone dead again, you ungrateful scamp, was what he said, and the short and the long of the whole story is about here. You can't go back to your own lot, for they won't have you, and without a start to the third day's company all by yourself, which might be lonely, you'll have to join with Captain Silver." So far, so good. My friends then were still alive, and though I partly believed the truth of Silver's statement that the cabin party were incensed at me for my desertion, I was more relieved than distressed by what I had heard. "I don't say nothing as you being here in our hands," continued Silver, "though there you are, and you may lay to it. I'm all for argument. I never seen the good come out of threatening. If you like the service, well, you join. And if you don't, Jim, well, you're free to answer no. Free and welcome, shipmate, and if fair can be said by immortal seamen, shiver me sides." "Am I to answer, then?" I asked, with a very tremulous voice, though through all the sneering talk I was made to feel the threat of death that overhung me, and my cheek burned and my heart beat painfully in my chest. "Lad," said Silver, "no one's a pressin' of you. Take your bearings, none of us won't hurry you, mate. Time goes so pleasant in your company, you see." "Well," says I, growing a bit bolder, "if that's the choose, I declare I have a right to know what's what, and why you're here, and where my friends are." "What's what?" repeated one of the buccaneers in a deep growl. "He'd be lucky one as knowed that." "You'll perhaps batten down your hatches till your smoke, my friend," cried Silver, truculently to the speaker. Truculently? And then in his first gracious tones he replied to me. "Yesterday morning, Mr. Hawkins," said he, "in the dog watch down came Dr. Livesey with a flag of truce. Says he, 'Captain Silver, you're sold out, the ship's gone.' Well, maybe we'd been taking a glass and a song to help it round. I won't say no. Leastways, none of us had looked out. We looked out, and by thunder, the old ship was gone. I never seen a pack of fools look fishier, and you may lay to that, if I tells you that looked the fishiest. Well, says the doctor, let's bargain. We bargained, him and I, and here we are, stores, brandy, blockhouse, and stores, brandy, blockhouse. The firewood you was thoughtful enough to cut, and in a manner of speaking, the whole blessed boat from Cross Trees to Kilson. As for them, they've tramped. I don't know where they are." He drew quietly at his pipe. "And lest you should take it into the head of yours," he went on, "that was you included in the treaty. Here's the last word that was said. 'How many of yous are,' says I, 'to leave?' 4, says he. 4 to one of us wounded. As for that boy, I don't know where he is, confound him, says he, nor I don't much care. We're about sick of him." Those were his last words. "Is that all?" I asked. "Well, it's all you're to hear, my son," returned Silver. "And now am I to choose?" "And now you are to choose, and you may lay to that," said Silver. "Well," said I, I am not such a fool, but I know pretty well what I have to look for. Let the worst come to the worst as little I care. I've seen too many die since I fell in with you, but there's a thing or two I have to tell you, I said, and by this time I was quite excited. And the first is this. Here you are, in a bad way. Ship lost, treasure lost, men lost. Your whole business gone to wreck, and if you want to know who did it, it was I. I was in the apple barrel the night you sighted land, and I heard you, John, and you, Dick Johnson, and Hans, who is now at the bottom of the sea, and told every word you said before the hour was out. And as for the schooner, it was I who cut her cable, and it was I who killed the men that were aboard of her, and it was I who brought her to where you'll never see her more, not one of you. The laugh's on my side. I've had the top of this business from the first. I no more fear you than I fear a fly. Kill me if you please, or spare me, but one thing I'll say, and no more. If you spare me, bygones are bygones, and when you fellows are in court for piracy, I'll save you all I can. It is for you to choose. Kill another, and do yourselves no good, or spare me, and keep a witness to save you from the gallows. I stopped, for I tell you I was out of breath, and to my wonder not a man of them moved, but all sat staring at me like so many sheep, and while they were still staring I broke out again. And now, Mr. Silver, I believe you're the best man here, and if things go for the worst, I'll take it kind of you to let the doctor know the way I took it. I'll bear it in mind, said Silver, with an accent so curious that I could not for the life of me decide whether he were laughing at my request or been favorably affected by my courage. I'll put one to that, cried the old mahogany seaman, Morgan by name, who I had seen in Long John's public house upon the quays of Bristol. It was him that knowed Black Dog. Well, and see here, added the sea cook, I'll put another again to that, by thunder, for it was the same boy who faked the chart from Billy Bones. First to last we split upon Jim Hawkins. There he goes, cried Morgan with an oath, and he sprang up, drawing his knife as if he had been 20. Avast there, cried Silver. Who are you, Tom Morgan? Maybe you thought you was captain here. By the powers, but I'll teach you better. Trust me, and you'll go where many a man's gone before you, first and last, these 30 year back. Some to the yard arms, shiver me sides, and some by the board, and all to feed the fishes. There's never a man looked at me between the eyes and seen a good day afterwards. Tom Morgan, you may lay to that. Morgan paused, but a hoarse murmur rose from the others. Tom's right, said one. I stood hazing long enough from one, added another. I'll be hanged if I be hazed by you, John Silver. Did any of you gentlemen want to have it out with me? Roared Silver, bending far forward from his position on the keg, with his pipe still glowing in his right hand. Put a name on what you're at. You ain't dumb, I reckon. Him that wants a shall get it. Have I lived this many years, and a son of a rum-punching cock his hat athwart my horse at the latter end of it? You know the way. You're all gentlemen of fortune by your account. Well, I'm ready. Take a cutlass, him that dares, and I'll see the color of his inside, crutch and all, before that pipe's empty. Not a man stirred. Not a man answered. That's your sort, is it? He added, returning his pipe to his mouth. Well, you're a gay lot to look at, anyway. Not much worth to fight, you ain't. Perhaps you can understand King George's English. I'm captain here by election. I'm captain here because I'm the best man by a long sea mile. You won't fight as gentlemen of fortune do, then by thunder you'll obey, and you may lay to it. I like that boy now. I never seen a better boy than that. He's more than a man than any pair of rats of you in this here house, and what I say is this. Let me say him, that'll lay a hand on him, that's what I say, and you may lay to it. There was a long pause after this. I stood straight up against the wall, my heart still going like a sledgehammer, but with a ray of hope now shining in my bosom. Silver leant back against the wall, his arms crossed, his pipe in the corner of his mouth, as calm as though he had been in church. Yet his eye kept wandering furtively, and he kept the tail of it on his unruly followers. They, on their part, drew gradually together towards the far end of the blockhouse, and the low hiss of their whispering sounded in my ear continuously like a stream. One after another they'd look up, and the red light of the torch would fall upon for a second on their nervous faces, for it was not towards me, it was towards Silver that they turned their eyes. You seem to have a lot to say, remarked Silver, spitting far into the air. Pipe up and let me hear it, or lay so. Ax your pardon, sir, returned one of the men. You're pretty free with some of the rules. Maybe you kindly keep an eye upon the rest. The crew's dissatisfied. This crew's don't valley bullying like a marlin spike. This crew's has its rights like the other crews. I'll make so free as that. And by your own rules, I take it as we could talk together. I ax your pardon, sir. I acknowledge you to be captain at this point, but I claim my right and steps outside for a council. and with an elaborate sea salute, this fellow, a long, ill-looking, yellow-eyed man of 35, stepped coolly towards the door and disappeared out of the house. One after another, the rest followed his example, each making salute as he passed, each adding some sort of apology. "According to the rules," said one of the folks of council, said Morgan, and one with another remark or another, all marched out and left Silver and me alone with the torch. The sea cook instantly removed his pipe. "Now look here, Jim Hawkins," he said in a steady whisper. That was no more than an audible. "You're within half a plank of death, and what's a long sight worse of torture. They're going to throw me off, but mark you, I stand by you thick and thin. I didn't mean to, no, not till you spoke up. I was about desperate to lose that much blunt and be hanged into the bargain, but I see you was right sort. I says to myself, you stand by Hawkins, John, and Hawkins'll stand by you. You're his last card, and by the living thunder, John, he's yours. Back to back, says I. You can save your witness, and he'll save your neck." I began dimly to understand. "You mean's all lost?" I asked. "Ah, by gum, I do. Ship gone, neck gone, that's the size of it. Once I looked into the bay, Jim Hawkins has seen no schooner. Well, I'm tough, but I gave out. And as for the lot of them, council, mark you, they're outright fools and cowards. I'll save your life, if so be as I can from them. But see here, Jim, tit for tat, you save Long John from swinging." I was bewildered. It seemed a thing so hopeless he was asking. He, the old buccaneer, the ringleader throughout. "What I can do, that I'll do," I said. "It's a bargain. You speak up plucky, and by thunder, I've a chance." He hobbled to the torch where it stood propped among the firewood, and he took a fresh light to his pipe. "Understand me, Jim," he said, returning. "I've a head on my shoulders, I have. I'm on the squire's side now. I know you got that ship safe somewheres. How you've done it, I don't know, but a safe is safe. I guess Hans and O'Brien turned soft. I never much believed in neither of them. Now you mark me, I ask no questions, or I won't let others. I know when a game's up, I do. And I know a lad that's staunch. Aye, that's who's that young. You and me might have done a power of good together." He drew some cognac from the cask into a tin can again. "Will you taste, messmate?" he asked. And when I had refused, "Well, I'll take a drain myself, Jim. I need a caulker, for there's trouble on hand, and to talking of trouble, why did that doctor give me the chart, Jim?" My face expressed a wonder so unaffected that he saw the needlessness of further questions. "Ah, well, he did, though. And there's something under that, no doubt. Something's surely under that, Jim, bad or good." And he took another swallow of the brandy, shaking his great fair head like a man who looks forward to the worst. End of chapter 28. This is going to be the last. I don't know. Maybe that's a good place to end. No, I think we need to read this last chapter. Okay, we're going to read this last chapter, and then we will end the reading for the evening. Maybe we'll stream a little long. No, that's 11:40. We'll raid out. I'm going to read this chapter, and then we'll finish up the marbles and raid out. Chapter 29. The Black Spot Again. The council of buccaneers had lasted some time when one of them re-entered the house and, with a repetition of the same salute, which had in my eyes an ironical air, begged for the captain's for a moment's loan of the torch. Silver briefly agreed, and the emissary retired again, leaving us together in the dark. "There's a breeze coming, Jim," said Silver, who had by this time adopted quite a friendly and familiar tone. I turned to the loophole nearest me and looked out. The embers of the great fire had so far burned themselves out, and now glowed so low and duskily, that I understood why these conspirators desired a torch. About halfway down the slope to the stockade, they were collected in a group. One held the light, another was on his knees in their midst, and I saw a blade of an open knife shine in his hand with varying colors in the moon and torchlight. The rest were all somewhat stooping, as though watching the maneuvers of this last. I could just make out that he had a book as well as a knife in his hand, and was still wondering how anything so incongruous had come into their possession when the kneeling figure rose once more to his feet, and the whole party began to move towards the house. "Here they come. Oh, here they come," says I, and I returned to my former position, for it seemed beneath my dignity that they should find me watching them. "Well, let 'em come, lad, let 'em come," and Silver said. "I still a shot in my locker." The door opened, and the 5 men standing huddled together just inside pushed one of their numbers forward. In any other circumstances, it would have been comical to see his slow advance, hesitating as he set down each foot, but holding his closed right hand in front of him. Step up, lad, cried Silver. I won't teach you. Hand it over, Leber. You know the rules, I do. I won't hurry a deputation. Thus encouraged, the buccaneer stepped forth more briskly, and having passed something to Silver from hand to hand, slipped yet more smartly back again to his companions. The sea cook looked at what had been given him. The black spot, I thought so. Where might you have got the paper? Oh, why, hello, look at now. This ain't lucky. You got and cut this out of a Bible. What fool's cut a Bible? Ah, there, cried Morgan. There. What did I say? No good'll come of that, I said. Well, you about fix it now among you, continued Silver. You all swing now, I reckon. What soft-headed lubber at a Bible? It was Dick, said one. Dick, was it? Well, then Dick'll get the prayers. He's seen a bit of slice of luck, said Dick, and you may lay to that. But here the long man with the yellow eyes struck in. Belay that talk, John Silver. This crew has tipped you the black spot in full council, as in duty bound, and just as you turn it over, as in duty bound, and see what's wrote there. Then you can talk. Thankfully, George, replied the sea cook. You always was brisk for business and has the rules by heart, George, as I'm pleased to see. Well, what is it anyway? Ah, depose, that's it, is it? Very pretty wrote, to be sure, like print, I swear. You hand her right, George? Why, you was getting quite a leading man in here crew. You'll be a captain next, I shouldn't wonder. Just oblige me with that torch again, will you? This pipe don't draw. Come now, says George. You don't fool this crew no more. You're a funny man by your account, but you're over now, and you'll maybe step over the barrel and help vote. I thought you said you knowed the rules, returned Silver contemptuously. Leastways, if you don't, I do, and I wait here, and I'm still your captain, mind, till you outs with your grievances, and I reply, in the meantime, your black spark aren't worth the biscuit. After that, we'll see. Oh, replied George, you don't be under no kind of apprehension. We're all square, we are. First, you made a hash of this cruise. You'll be a bold man to say no to that. Second, you let the enemy out of this here trap for nothing. Why did they want out? I don't know, but it's pretty plain they wanted out. Third, you wanted to let us go a set upon them on the march. Ah, we're thorough, John Silver. You want to play booty, and that's what's wrong with you. And then fourth, there's this here boy. Is that all? Asked John Silver quietly. Enough to, retorted George. We're all swing and sun dry for your bungling. Well, now, look here, I'll answer these 4 pints. One after another, I'll answer 'em. I made a hash of this cruise, did I? Well, now, y'all know what I wanted, and y'all know that if it had been done, that we'd have been aboard the Espanola the night as ever was, every man of us alive and fit and full of good plum druff, as if this treasure was in the hold of her by thunder. Well, who crossed me? Who forced my hand, as was the lawful captain? Who tipped me the black spot the day we landed and began this dance? Ah, it's a fine dance, I'm with you there, and looks mighty like a hornpipe and all ropes in that execution dock by London town, it does. But who done it? Why, it was Anderson, and Hans, and you, George Mary, and you're the last aboard above the same meddling crew, and you have the Davy Jones insolence to up and stand for captain over me, you, that sank the lot of us, by the powers, but this tops the stiffest yarn to nothing. Silver paused, and I could see by the faces of George and his late comrades that these words had not been said in vain. That's for number 1, cried the accursed, wiping the sweat from his brow, for he had been talking with a vehemence that shook the house. Why, I give you my word, I'm sick to speak o' you. You have neither sense nor memory, and I leave it to your fancy that your mother's was that I let you come to see. See, gentlemen of fortune, I reckon traitors is your trade. Go on, John, said Morgan. Speak up to the others. We're going to do one more campaign battle, and then we're going to do a dungeon run after we raid out. So this is the last campaign battle we're going to do, and then we'll do a dungeon run after we raid out. Thank you for your units, and good luck on the next battle. Ah, the others, returned John. They're a nice lot, ain't they? You say the cruise is bungled. Aye, by gum, if you could understand how bad it's bungled, you would see. With that near the gibbet that the neck's stiff with thinking on it. You seen 'em, maybe, hanged in chains, birds about 'em, seeming to pitting 'em out as they go down the tide. Who's that, says one. That way, that's John Silver. I knowed him well, says another, and you can hear the chains a-jangle as you go about to reach for the other boy. Now, that's about where we are. Every mother's son of us, thanks to him and Hans and Anderson and other ruination of fools of you. And if you want to know about number 4 and that boy, why, shiver me timbers, isn't he a hostage? Are we a-going to waste a hostage? No, not us. We might kill our last chance, and I shouldn't wonder. Kill that boy, not me, mates. And number 3, well, there's a deal to say, a number 3. Maybe I don't count it nothing to have a real college doctor come to you see every day. You, John, with your head broke, or you, George Mary, that had to argue shakes upon you not 6 hours ago, and had your eyes the color of lemon peel to this same moment on the clock. And maybe perhaps you didn't know that there was a consort coming too, but there is, and not so long till then, and so we'll see who'll be glad to have a hostage when it comes to that. And as for number 2, that's why I made a bargain. Well, you came a-crawling on your knees to me to make it. On your knees you came, you was that downhearted, and you'd have starved too if I hadn't. But that's a trifle. You look there, and that's why. And he cast down upon the floor the paper that I instantly recognized. None other than the chart on yellow paper with the 3 red crosses that I had found in the oilcloth at the bottom of the captain's chest. Why the doctor had given it to him was more than I could fancy. But if it were inexplicable to me, the appearance of the chart was incredible to the surviving mutineers. They leaped upon it like a cat upon a mouse. It went from hand to hand, one tearing it from the other, and by the oaths and the cries and the childish laughter with which they accompanied their examination, you would have thought not only that they were fingering at the very gold, but were at sea with it, besides, in safety. Yes, said one, that's Flint sure enough. J.F. and a skull below with the clove hitch to fit, so he be done ever. Mighty pretty, said George, but how are we to get away with it, us with no ship? Silver suddenly sprang up and supporting himself with a hand against the wall. Now I give you a warning, George, he cried. One more word of your sauce and I'll call you down and fight you. How? Why, how do I know? You ought not to tell me that. You and the rest and that lost me much sooner with your interference burn you. But not you can't. You ain't got the intervention of a cockroach. But civil you can speak and shall, George Mary. You may lay to that. That's fair enough, said the old man Morgan. Fair, I reckon so. You lost the ship, I found the treasure. Who's the better man at that? And now I resign, by thunder. Elect who you may please to be your captain. Now I'm done with it. Silver, they cried. Barbecue forever. Barbecue for captain. So that's the tune, is it? Cried the cook. George, I reckon you'll have to wait another turn, friend. And lucky for you, as I'm not a revengeful man. But that was never my way. And now, shipmates, this black spot, 'tain't much good now, is it? Dick crossed his luck and spoiled his Bible, and that's about all. It'll do good to kiss the book on still, won't it? Growled Dick, who was evidently uneasy at the curse he had brought upon himself. A Bible with a bit cut out. Not it. It don't mind no more in a ballad book. Don't it, though? Cried Dick with the snort. Well, I reckon that's worth having, too. Here's Jim. Here's a curiosity for you, said Silver, and he tossed me the paper. It was around about the size of a crown piece. One side was black, for it had been the last leaf. The other contained a verse or two of Revelation, those words amongst the rest, which struck sharply home upon my mind. Without are dogs and murderers. The printed side had been blackened with wood ash, which already began to come off and soil my fingers. On the blank side had been written with the same material the one word, deposed. I have that curiosity beside me at this moment, but not a trace of writing now remains with beyond a single scratch, such as the man might make with his thumbnail. That was the end of the night's business. Soon after, with the drink all around, we lay down to sleep, and the outside of Silver's vengeance was to put George Mary up for sentinel, and threaten him with death if he should prove unfaithful. It was long ere I could close an eye, and heaven knows I had matter enough for thought in the men whom I had slain that afternoon, in my own most perilous position, and above all, in the remarkable game that I saw Silver now engaged upon, keeping the mutineers together with one hand and grasping with the other after every means, possible and impossible, to make his peace and save his miserable life. He himself slept peacefully and snored aloud, yet my heart was sore for him, wicked as he was, to think on the dark perils that environed and the shameful gibbet that awaited him. End of chapter 29. No, wake up, everybody. Des gets the win. Did we? No, we didn't. Let me make a note of where we're at. We will definitely finish next time, and quick. And how? We have 44 pages left to go. We did good tonight, guys. We read 82 pages. Is anybody still awake? Anybody still awake? Anybody still here? Let me go into my notes. Thank you, Kelly. All right, so chapter... Where are we at? Chapter 30, page 253. Whew. That was a good one. That was a good little bit, man. That was a good bit. It's hot. It's hot. We're going to have our stunning conclusion now. There is a vote going on in the Discord. I was just up to check lurks before returning, Sapine. Thank you for a lovely company and friendly voice to listen to. Thank you, Kitty. There is a vote in the Discord currently for what the next book will be, because we're going to finish this one next week. It's between The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Winnie the Pooh, and A Study in Scarlet. There is a lot of Wizard of Oz books. There are a lot of Sherlock Holmes books. That's the first one, Study in Scarlet. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, of course, they're all of them are good. When we get to books that are in the, Trevor Island Discord movie night, I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. That's all right. I expect nothing less. Vote for what you want. Vote for what you want. We're going to leave it up for a couple more days. So, I'll leave it up through Tuesday. So it'll be up for a week. And thank you, Farmer Bob, for complimenting the pirate voices. I hope that I kept up with them. I hope that they were still as good at the beginning as the end. I know the voice gets to be a little harsh towards the end. Let's take a look at who we're going to raid, guys. Feel the need for rum now? Thanks for the gifty. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, a couple people got some gifties today. Keep your, if you're hanging out, or if you happen to have things on your wish list, you may get a gifty every now and then. Annie got some gifties because I caught her talking about it in stream, because I can't see her wish list anymore. But I seen her talking about it in another stream, and I beat her to the punch. All right, where are we at? Do we have any readers on? Literally, as I was checking out. Fastest steamer in the West. Oh, that doesn't sound good. Looks like we got... Looks like we might have a Kiwi on. She's 1 hour in. Yeah, let's go. We're gonna go see this person. Black Flag playlist. Oh, I bet that's really good. Dude, we got this really good one. We got this. There was this really good one at the beginning. Where is it? It was the Spanish ladies version. This is a bop. Breaking my back at work. Thanks for watching it. Looked at the community notification and then my email told me to get to do it. Yeah. That'll happen. That'll happen. Got to be quick. Got to be quick. All right. So this is where we're going to go. Somebody want to make a follower, a raid message real quick? Just use globals. Just use globals. I put the Wellerman Sea Chanting in Discord music channel too. Nice. All right, there they are. There they are. Annie, copy Annie's for the follower emote, follower raid message. Follow, do Kerr's if you want, if you're subbed. Brain. Still had the one copied from last night. Nice. Hotkeyed them to my Steam Deck. Nice. All right, so we're gonna go see this person. They're reading Harding's Luck by E. Nesbitt, 1909, from Project Gutenberg. Yeah, let's go see her. Let's go say hi. I'll be back on Friday, guys. Small chance. Small chance that we have a skin out, but I do not think it'll be Skinty Day. I think it'll be next week. The gladiator. And they did. Sly reached out to me while I was at work, and she was like, "Hey, you still have these 2 epics? Like, what are we doing? We want to clear these tickets." So I'm gonna have to do some work this week and do some editing and get back to them. All right, so let's go ahead and raid. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I love you guys. You're gonna have to follow before you can do anything. Good luck making those epic streamer, man. Hey, thank you. Be good to yourself, be good to everybody else. Get the good sleeps. Self-care, best care. Try to do a good deed every day. Help somebody out, do something nice. And don't get caught doing it. I love you. I'll see you Friday. It's so long. Have a good week, guys. Bye.
We don't negotiate with terrorists.
I can see it here. This is Malicious. Won the car wrap. Did we see? We saw a car wrap. We got a car wrap, Iris.
Very old-fashioned. And thank you so much for the raid, Alex. That's really appreciated. Wow, 12 of you.
Great.
What have you been up to? And thank you also for the follow.
So happy.
That's fantastic. I really
playing
appreciate it.
a brand
And
new
Stephen
race
was
right
also
now.
raiding. Oh my
Yo, guys,
goodness.
you wanna pay
So
to
many
win back?
raids. All the
This is what you
fantastic
get. Look.
stuff.
Pro League,
All
first
the
place.
thank you for the
Quicksilver,
follows and the
second place.
raids and the everything
They both have
else.
these
You'll see what
amazing
the you if you're following me,
this
you'll
pay
see
to
what the
win
rules
back.
are. You've also got
First
your
place,
cool
second
down
place,
time.
first
That's
place,
the
second
chat
place, first
quarantine,
place, second
just
place.
to keep things nice
I'll
and
rock you
safe
out
for
this
everybody.
wrap. This is a wrap you should purchase.
And I do
in the
appreciate
Nitro
it.
Stream
I
Racing
really
store.
do. Thank you so much.
Pay
We're
to
right in the middle of reading this book called Harding's Luck.
Let's
It's the
go.
second one of 2. And thank you for the welcoming them
Quicksilver,
to
Selena
Coleslaw. I
Rado.
really do appreciate my own community getting
Yo, I
interactive
told
with
you.
the people who've
Quicksilver,
arrived who don't know
pay
what this
to
is
win
like here.
that.
So we're reading a
go.
book called Harding's Luck. It was written by a lady
Let's go.
called Edith Nesbitt.
No joke.
She was known for being
I came
an
and ran all the
early
shipping. Yo,
proponent
I
of
know.
socialism,
Wait.
not
hanging out with virus.
Soviet-style socialism, but socialism where those who had much were responsible for the much that they had to make the lives of those who had very little or nothing better than they were. That it was their responsibility because they had more than the others. And so she was a strong believer in trying to bring about a little bit more social balance. And so some of her stories have a little bit more of that flavour than others. But often the stories she wrote were lots of fun, and she wrote them in such a way that they were fun for the children who read them. They weren't written so that adults would go, here's a marvellously improving story for my young Johnny. I shall buy it for him. He shall love it because it will improve his behaviour. Which a lot of the books at the time, the end of the Victorian era, were all about improving the child, not about actually having fun and adventures. She still had moral points in her stories, but they were part of this story in a very much more natural way, and the children themselves within each of her stories have a lot more say over the direction of what's happening. It's not all under the supervision of an adult. Where the story goes, the content of the story is not driven by adults, it's driven by the child characters that are the main characters of the story. And so you get the sense of connection for the children at the time with these revolutionary new books was so much stronger. The book that most people know her for writing is The Railway Children. Not so much because most of us read it, because most of us haven't read it, but because of various TV series and TV movies that have been made over the years. It's a standalone book. It's one of her earlier ones. It's not the earliest one. But the first one that she wrote that really took off was before that, and it was called The Would-Be Goods. No, it was The Treasure Seekers. I think that's the first one. Would-Be Goods was part of that series. And it just hit all the right marks for the kids. And so that children enjoyed it. It meant that she was able to write more and produce more. And she actually wrote in part because of that, but also because there was financial need in her own family. She was able to make a living from it. And writing other things, leaflets and pamphlets and stuff to educate people on certain aspects of socialism or anything else like that is not something that you're going to make a living off. Children's books as an alternative in the day, yes, much more viable. But they don't feel like they were just written to a formula. They actually feel like a lot more fun for the children that are in the story and also the children listening. Those are the sort of books I read. So welcome, and I am going to carry on with reading. There's a whole bunch of commands down below, and there's also redemptions that you can use using my page currency, which is pages. Once you've been here long enough to have accrued some of them, I'm still waiting for my regulars to have discovered the new one. And see what they're going to do with that. They might have to save up a little bit more because it's a little bit more spendy than some of the others. Anyway, we're going to carry on with the story and see where it goes. It's a long chapter, so it'll be the only one I'm doing today. And thankfully, so far, the frame rate is that we are not dropping frames yet. Yay. If you're into prayers, pray for my internet connection to stay stable. And if you're into luck, cross your fingers, dig out the four-leaf clovers, tap, knock on wood, whatever it is.
Yeah, the night she was convinced.
Whatever works for you. Best wishes for the health of the streams.
Smoky, char-grilled flavor. Come back some.
We'll carry on. So he referred to the nurse as Goody because it was a term that was often used for Lady Goodwife was a form of job title when you're addressing someone who is like the nurse and
through the swamp boss, and that's about as far as I got.
And so her job is to look after small children in the house. And they were often called nurse. Not necessarily specifically for someone who's sick, but for looking after small children as they get older and older. But that also included when they were sick, so that's why he's referring to her as Goody. The Good Wife, which we know there's a TV series about. some character
Half the
called
girl.
Good Wife.
No. Yeah,
Or
I want to
that's
give
their
another
role, whatever.
one bomb out,
It's-
chat.
The term has come
That
originally
will give us
from
up to
this
13 out
earlier
of 30.
era. So,
So everyone, we've
what
actually
else?
come to support the
We've
stream.
wrought a cure. The kitchen physic is what he
Feel
needs. So
free
that's the
to,
food that he eats. That's
join
what's
us
going
later.
to build him up
1
now
minute
because
left for
the
a
boy's
ticket.
getting sick. Good
Yo,
broth. That's
thank you
a
for-
form of soup.
For the
And
100
gruel. We've
bits, my
talked about
friend.
gruel.
Yo, Slevin,
Gruel
what's
is
up?
like thin
Yo, thank you.
oatmeal.
Thank you.
You know, when it's
I'm gonna
cooked
drop
up.
a one bomb right
Thin
now. Yo, shout out
porridge,
to my
porridge
friend
soup.
21st level.
Gruel. And
Appreciate
panada.
you.
We've talked about panada.